Testing 1 2, testing 1 2. Anyone there? Alright. Had some technical difficulties before, so hopefully it's straightened out. You have to forgive me, eyes are a little bit... Oh, it looks like who we got down there. Sweetberry 32, hello. Need to do some adjustment on my end, bear with me. Alright. Couple more people coming in. I was supposed to start at 7 and I did, but I had some technical problems between my laptop and the cell phone getting everything coordinated. Things weren't quite matching up, and so I lost a little bit of time there. Of course, I didn't do a dry run beforehand just to make sure because I was in the middle of doing a whole bunch of other stuff. So anyway, let's get going into something here. Now, we've got general topics of discussion. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on that we can cover. I have no particular actual angle in mind. I'm pretty much up for grabs for pretty much anything going on. Is there anything that you guys want to talk about, want to hear, any questions you want to ask, feel free. Just make sure I can see everything that's going on, because trying to look at the screen on my phone is a little bit more difficult than what I thought it was going to be. All right, well, get the ball rolling. So, we'll do a quick thing, throwback about me. As far as emergency preparedness and prepping goes, there's the long story and then there's the short story. The short story is currently the level of preparations that I've been in is probably been for the last 10 years, maybe a little bit longer, off and on. The longer version of it is I've always kind of been a prepper without understanding or really knowing about what it was, not until I got to my teen years. I mean, I was always one as a little kid. hearing stories from my grandparents about, when the tornado tore through the town or when there was a flood, things like that. So I was always of the mindset of something bad could happen, so you need to be ready. And between being in the Cub Scouts and being in the Boy Scouts, I gained a little bit more practical knowledge on that, but it was always something for me that was kind of like what I did. It was sort of like I always had the backpack when I was a little kid with a change of clothes, a couple cans of tuna fish, and the can opener, and I was ready to go. And then even moving forward, when I've moved out on my own and I'm living in my own place, it was a small apartment. It was a tiny little studio apartment, but I always had extra stuff on hand just in case the power went out, just in case there was a bad situation where I had to, skedaddle out of there. It wasn't until realistically having a family and you get that broader sense of things going on, because now it's not a matter of, oh, there could be a hurricane or there could be this or could be that. Your mind is also thinking about all those little things involved with having kids and all the things that go on with them. So that sort of envelope got a little bit wider, a little bit broader, and I started focusing more on, to one extent or another, one, trying to save money because never had enough of it, and trying to plan for certain things ahead. And that sort of evolved into that. And even if, let's see, I believe it was National Geographic, I think, where they had the show, Discovery Channel had the show Doomsday Preppers. When that first came out, my wife and I, we would watch it, and it was fun, it was entertaining, and I enjoyed it because two primary things. I got to see other people pretty much in some similar situations like I am, with some of the same ideas on how to handle certain things, or with ideas and ways of doing things that I myself didn't think of, and sort of like, oh, that's a good thing. We should plan on doing that. We should try something out like that. So it was more of a validation that, prepping at that time when that show came out was still, you were that weird guy down the street. You were that person that, don't ask them about this because they'll go on and on about this conspiracy and that conspiracy and everything else. And that was sort of the way it was. But it did make more sense to plan ahead to the best as you can for things that are going on in your area. And living in New England, up here in the Northeast, we get the four seasons. Now, granted, there was a time 20 years ago where the four seasons came in the exact same order all the time. Now it's sort of a potluck sort of thing where just the other day we had temperatures down in the 40s, and then they're going back up again to the 60s and 70s. But 2 weeks earlier, they were close to 80, and then the week before that, they were at 30. So it's one of those things where we no longer have the spring, summer, fall, winter, and all the expected weather. We get weather, across the board, mix and match all the time. Being prepared for that, looking at different situations when it comes to the housing market, finances, money, things like that. And there are some things that, I have absolutely no control over, so I don't plan for them in the aspect of that. Like when you think about the 2008 market crash, the dot-com bubble, I had nothing invested in dot-coms. I had no money sitting in the stock market. I had no extra finances playing and dabbling in real estate. So while I understand it was bad for the economy on a broad spectrum, didn't really affect me at all. So there are some situations where I don't plan for them because there's absolutely no connection, no tie to whatever that potential threat or damage or whatever it is could be. Jacqueline R., yeah, it was a good show. And don't worry about being 6 minutes late. I was technically 15 minutes late getting this whole thing started. So now, as I was saying, with prepping the way it is currently, I've had friends, family members, coworkers that when I would talk about certain things, like, oh yeah, you should look at, stocking up on this or getting this, getting that. You got the usual eye rolls. You got the kind of like, oh, come on, man, you one of those guys. And then 5 years ago, 10 years ago, a few of them started to change the way they thought about certain things. Sometimes it takes a direct incident to affect a person directly and make them think, okay, yeah, this is something I need to look out for. Even just 5 years ago, most people that I knew that weren't necessarily against the concept of prepping, because I found that there are still, and I'm sure many of you have experienced this, two primary trains of thought If some disaster or crisis happens, there's absolutely nothing that you as the individual person can do about it, so why bother doing anything? And then on the other aspect, if that same crisis, disaster, whatever it is happens, you can plan, you can plan, you can plan, but it doesn't mean that your plan is going to work out, which is 100% true. I don't hold any of my plans to be a guarantee this will work, no fail. But I stand by, I'd rather have 1,000 plans that might not work out than have no plans at all. And with prepping, the way I feel with emergency preparedness, that's really what it comes down to. It still comes down to, yes, you're going to have some incidences where you're just not prepared for them. There's nothing you can do about it. You just got to keep your wits on you and try to move through it. But if you're at least conscious of it, thinking about it, that's better than the person that we've all seen the news whenever there's been some major disaster, especially if it's a natural disaster in an area where it happens on a regular basis. They always find the one person who is one, most likely in shock, but still, the first things out of their mouth is, I can't believe something like this would happen. Really, you can't believe that a wildfire in the middle of a heavily dry forested area that is prone to wildfires would sweep through and wipe out the town, or a coastal town in a hurricane zone gets flooded, completely washed out. There are some things where, yeah, you can't stop the hurricane, you can't stop the wildfire, but you can be prepared to at least evacuate or do what you can to mitigate to some extent whatever is going on in that area. And it's sort of like, you know, the friends that I have, we're all, I'd say, about the same age. So we're all in our 50s, and we've all lived a pretty generously identical life. No real dramatic swings on either way, plus or minus. And we've all kind of settled into our natural routines of, work, family, all that sort of stuff. But I have noticed that it is more akin, maybe it is the mindset that we all do have some level of preparation, emergency preparedness in our back pocket of things that we do. It's not a daily thing. It's not a regular everyday routine that, this must be done, this must be done. I try to keep organized, as you can see the stuff back here, but even this, it gets out of hand sometimes. But we all take into account that there are going to be those oddball things that happen that we need to be ready for, but we can't always guarantee that we are. And I'm sure a lot of you have the same thing going on. You're prepping, you're doing the best you can, whether you live in a big city or a small town, East Coast, West Coast, high up in the mountains or down by the Gulf. You have your different physical, geographic environments, but you also have the different social, economic environments that play into a factor with that as well. During what I think it was during from 2012, 2016 going forward, where you had a lot of protests going on across the country. There were protests around here in Connecticut. There were protests at the Capitol. There were protests in a few of the other big cities. But quite honestly, you could probably fill 2 movie theaters with the number of people that showed up. And as far as the after effects of those protests, nothing more than a Publix worker with a dustpan and a broom cleaning up. No major damage, no riots, no nothing like that. But then if you draw a diagonal line and head towards Boston or down to New York City, during that same period, you have property damage, you have major destruction, you have tens upon thousands to hundreds of thousands of people migrating in and out into those areas. Sorry, I'm just reading it. It's a little bit hard for me to read from here, and I'm trying to keep my eye on the screen down there as well, but neither one's working out. So back to my short little rant. So for me, emergency preparedness presently is still more about planning for the everyday things that normally come about. Expect the snowstorm, the blizzard to come out of nowhere in the wintertime, sometimes fall. Expect the thunderstorms and the hurricanes. I mean, even just 2 years ago, we had a windstorm, which is really what it was, just a windstorm, some heavy rain, but we have an old tree. 30-foot limb fell off the tree onto the front of the house, and that started a whole cascade of things going on from that point. But luckily, no major damage, and it was rectified after almost a year. Everything was finally finished and repaired. But it's small little things like that in terms of what I have to do, what my family is set to do, and the plans that we have, depending upon what it was. Even years before that, there was a big ice storm, knocked out power in the state, and we were without power for almost a full week. So I ended up, my family ended up staying with in-laws, and they were there. I would go to work, come back, do what I could around the house. I had to do some, ad hoc electrical work to put in an extra outlet so I could kill the power off the breaker and then run a generator to power the house to at least get the heat going so that way the pipes don't freeze during the time period that it was on. Got the heat up, had enough power, could actually heat up the water heater, things like that. But from that, I started building up all the extra things that I needed to make things a little bit better. I had the opportunity just last year to get a better generator and have a professional come in and do some rewiring for the circuit breakers. So everything's all up to code now. And this way, if the power does go out again, we've got a backup system in place, got it all metered and monitored out so we know how long we can basically go off the grid if the power is down. And small little things like that. And that's where I spend most of my time, is when I either see something on YouTube or I get an idea in my head. And a lot of times that happens just, like right off the top, something will pop into my head. Sometimes it's, that squirrel running around, just sort of zigzagging back and forth. Other times, nope, this is an idea that's not going to go away. And then I try to see what I can do. Is it already out there? Is it something that I saw years ago and now I'm just thinking about it? Is this something that has been circulating around but I haven't quite paid attention to it? And I try to see what I can do to focus in on that. Currently everyone's going for backup power for solar and everything, and my landscape area is just not set up for solar. It's for the cost of getting it and the return on it. I'm still going to be spending as much, if not more money. Yes, the electric bill will be lower, but then the payments that I'm making for the solar power system is going to be significantly higher. So I'm opting to look at trying to work with, the small solar battery generators and just increasing the battery size, and then working on a rotational schedule of, when the power is down, what am I going to feed? What am I powering up, and for how long? So this way I can conserve some energy and get through it that way. As far as, food, most of us, anywhere you go, food is more expensive. It just is what it is. So now you just think about, like we have a membership to two of those big box stores, and we don't go every single month, but we usually look at what they have for their coupons and their sales, and then that's when we'll head out and we'll get some of the things that we need, start rotating some of the stock out, moving things around, shifting and everything. And it keeps us going pretty good. And we've got a freezer test, which isn't in use right now because it does chew up a lot of electricity. But in the event that, the cost of meats continues to rise, it may be to our advantage to look at those bulk meat purchases and, freezer wrap everything and then start up the deep freezer again, put it into the freezer chest. So this way we have it and, it'll last for a while. With the use of dehydrated and freeze-dried foods, those I like, but I keep those I put those in my category as the backup to the backup. It's the last line. Effectively speaking, if you were to go in my fridge, you look in our refrigerator, between what's in the refrigerator and effectively what's in the kitchen cabinets upstairs is about a week's worth of food, maybe 9 days worth of food, no problem. 3 meals a day, 9 days. Then you come down here and you've got the stuff that's up on the shelves in our second refrigerator. Now you've got about 3 weeks worth. And then we still have the dehydrated food that's in a tub, and those, I think for the ones that we have, is probably another 3 weeks worth. But I look at it, if there's one of those major, it's a SHTF movie type, big disaster, asteroid, rampaging dinosaurs, whatever it is, and the overall infrastructure of the world has come to a halt, and you only have what you have, and that's it. The food that's up there in the kitchen ready to go, fine, we eat through that. The food that's down here, we can prepare the meals, we can ration it out, stretch it out another week or two, get a full month out of it, fine, no problem. When we get to the point where now we're looking at the freeze-dried stuff, that's when you really have to start thinking, where are we going to get more? What are we going to do to plan ahead? So I know that I've had some friends that have this and they look at that as that's their first go-to. I'd rather not, because the stuff that you buy on a regular basis, most of it, depending upon what it is, 6 months to 2 years average shelf life for in the bag, box, or can. So if you keep a constant rotation of those, using those all the time, buying an extra one, use the buy one, get one, buy two, get three, all that kind of stuff, you'll always be able to keep a certain minimum extra stock on hand. So this way, the dehydrated freeze-dried stuff, which is a lot more expensive, one, you'll save money because yes, you'll put an investment in of 60 to $100, but then afterwards you'll be able to have that as your actual, this is down to the last line defense of food, and you can look at what you have and meter out what you have. But again, it also comes down to your personal situation. How many people are in your group? Is it just you? Is it you and your dog? Is it you and 5 other people? Do you have plans with other people to effectively join resources and combine everything? Because that also makes the difference too. So it's more on the aspect of when you're planning it out, you do end up planning for multiple scenarios. When I was single, my plan was that of a single individual person. All my gear, all the food, anything that I had was basically, I could pack up one backpack, everything that I actually needed that was useful for me if I needed to, and boom, gone. That's it. Heading off into the hills, out into the woods, or just trekking my way through the city, whatever it was. And I used to be able to do, dry runs. I had done one long, long time ago where I went back up to my hometown, you know, got a bus up there, had all my gear packed up, and hiked and camped my way all the way back down to my apartment. Took me 2 days, and that was with one overnight inside a state park. But effectively speaking, for me, that was my litmus test to really see, where my status level was at, where my bar was, so I knew where I had to improve on things. And it came down for me. It came down to changing up some of the gear, changing my loadout as far as what I was carrying, what I actually needed, and what I was using. Now, granted, it was a short 48-hour period, and it was probably just about 40 miles total, with about 6 hours of sleep in between. But that was in that controlled environment. I had an idea of where I was going, and I mapped my way through, basically bypassing all the major roads, sticking realistically. I pretty much went through state parks and city parks and large commercial fields, making my way through till I got down to the last 3 miles, and then there was no choice. It's walking down the street on the sidewalk with all my gear, which got me a lot of looks, and thankfully none of them involved the police. But I made it back home, and that was the end of that. But it was one of those things where I do these little tests and I keep it in the back of my head. Now, have I done one like that since? No, don't have time. I'm working too damn much. Got so many other things to do. Do I feel that I need to do something like that? Absolutely. When am I going to do it? Who knows? Maybe the next time I get a vacation, I've got a little time to spare, but we'll see. Now, as far as anything else, as far as prepping gear goes, there's a myriad of prepping gear. And even, I'll use an example on my channel, all of my affiliate sponsored videos. I'll tell you this, here's the little secret on that. The products that I do the videos for are either directly from companies where I myself have already purchased something from them, and I felt that the company was reputable enough that is okay, I can do a video on that. Or it's an individual item that I looked at as far as this is something that I would want to have, but I also have my own personal price point. If I can't actually afford it on some level, like things that require payment plans, I avoid. I look at it this way: if I can buy it like that, PayPal, click, yes, no problem. Amazon, click, yes, no problem. Otherwise, I pass it by. It may be something really great, but I pass it by. And there's always going to be, in terms of, I've noticed with prepping, there's always going to be those one or two things where it's an expensive piece, but it's one of those things where you only need that one, or you only need to buy it that one time. My generator that I've got, the old one that I had was an emergency generator. It maybe cost $300 at the time, but it was a $300 generator, and it lived its life as best as it could, but it could not keep up after almost 10 years of intermittent use. The new one that I bought, I did all my research on it. I did all the studying and everything on it. It's a dual fuel, so it's gasoline and propane. I did the math, literally did the math, which I hate doing, to see exactly how much gasoline on the wattage that I would be drawing from on the house for a half load compared to the propane, so I know how much gas I need to keep on hand versus the propane. Did all that stuff, and then finally decided to pull the trigger on it. And that was including looking at the solar generator systems for what they were. And the main problem was is the systems that I could afford for the same price significantly reduced in the power available for what they could do, even cutting down to bare minimum, because there was basically coming down to I could run heat and a few lights and a refrigerator in the wintertime, nothing more. Summertime, not going to be able to run an AC. The ceiling fans, yeah, it's just going to move hot air around and it's just going to be miserable. So I opted for going for conventional fossil fuels instead of the newer high-tech battery system. Now, granted, if you have enough batteries, then yeah, you can go ahead and you can load up, and then you have a little bit more power on standby where you buy the larger system. So it's little things like that. So when I do those affiliate brand things, it's not necessarily, oh, here, buy, and then, I get a percentage from the commission and all that kind of stuff. It's, I'm putting this out there just as, hey, if you don't have one, or if you're thinking about it, or if you're just curious, here it is. It's up to you at that point to decide what you want to do. The items that I have, those go into the preps. Everything that I have goes into the preps. The water filtration systems, the gas masks, all that stuff builds up into it. And then that makes it easier for me to add on to it later on. So I always look for something that is practical and useful, but still affordable and has some type of value other than simply you paid for it and it looks nice. It still needs to do something. And it needs to be able to do something that I feel that, if not in the immediate sense, but in one of those crisis situations, it'll work for me rather than work against me. So it's one of those things where with, a lot of the prepping gear that's out there, and I love some of those ads that pop up on my feed. I'm like, ooh, that looks so nice. But then, when I click on the site and I go to it and I look at, starting at $8,000, I'm like, oh, nope, you lost me. When you start in the thousands, you usually lose my attention right away. I'm more of a dozens to low hundreds kind of shopper first until I can really see that, okay, this is really worth it. Now I'll put some money into it, because then you gotta sit down and you gotta do the paycheck math, thinking, okay, this paycheck for this, and then and if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out, and I move on to something else. Let's see what we got here. Trying to catch up on some of the feed going on here. I'm just gonna. Lisa Mendez here. Old ways of moving in daylight and darkness will be dangerous. I'll speak on that real quick. That, I'm torn on two levels. Moving at night definitely is an advantage if you know where you're going and you know the actual terrain. You still have the disadvantages that you don't know who else is out there. Now, first thing people are thinking of, or at least me, is night vision, which, I've got a night vision scope, which helps out in a stand, pause, look, sweep, and then move forward. But it doesn't help me out on a step-by-step basis, because one hand is going to have to hold the scope to see what's going on. It's designed more or less for setting up on a tripod and looking at a field of view, but I've used it and it works well. I've got a good range with it, but it also requires that I'm going to be moving step, 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 peep through the scope, look at the area, step, step, step. Moving in daylight, I will say, we'll give this scenario. We'll give one of those, made for movie situations, an I Am Legend, or any of those disaster films where, everyone is effectively the bad guy and you're the last good guy and you're just trying to get to that sanctuary wherever it is. In daylight, people are going to spot you no matter where you are. And especially you won't see them. They could be inside a building 500 yards away looking through a window. You're not going to notice them, but they've been watching you for the last 15 minutes, make your way across the street, through the parking lot, and things like that. In broad daylight, that's going to be more or less a death sentence if you're trying to avoid being caught, captured, killed, all that sort of stuff. Moving at night, you do have that advantage that unless they have night vision, or unless they've established a control, a perimeter, let's say you're approaching someone's camp and you're not aware of it, they might have trip lines, they might have small marker indicators that are very low luminescence. You think about glow sticks. You set up a glow stick and you put, let's say, a piece of cardboard behind it with a little bit of aluminum foil, and you've got that tucked or wedged in front of a car tire. Now, the car tire doesn't do anything. The car is just stationary off to the side. But you can see that low faint glow from 200 feet away in your little perch. Someone's walking by. It could be a cloudy new moon night, so there's no illumination anywhere, there's no power. That glow gets blotted out, and you see a brief little area of silhouette that your eyes can focus on, and you know the distance because you're the person that set up the distance to know that, oh, that's 220 feet to the light. They're going in that direction. They're going to be passing this object here. Next thing you know, if you're the person moving in the dark, creeping along, you're not going to even hear the snap. You're just going to be, pizza pie splattered on the ground, and they loot through your body and pick your bones up and everything else afterwards. And the next day, you're nothing but a pair of like dirty socks, and that's it. So the disadvantages to moving at night, if you don't know the terrain and you know that there are hostile forces around, you need something to help you see better without giving your position away. Moving in daylight, you can move faster, and depending upon what the situation is, you may have the advantage to one extent or another of literally moving, scooting through cover to cover to cover as best you can until you get someplace safe. But it really comes down to where you're leaving from and where you're trying to get to, and that space in between. If I'm trying to move my entire family by foot from our home to some other location because we have to, depending upon where it is, I'd rather do it at night than in the daytime, because in the daytime, in the daytime, it's just going to be too chaotic if it is one of those all hell is broken loose things, because you're going to have people running every which way. At night, yes, there's going to be people out there, but it's going to be more selective. It's going to be a little bit easier to navigate through. But again, that's if I'm going from one known point to another known location and I've got a pre-planned route out. I already have an idea of where I'm going, what buildings are there, things like that. If you drop me off in the middle of nowhere or in the middle of some town that I haven't been to and I have to make my way around, that's going to be a different situation altogether. But again, me by myself versus me with other people, that changes up the parameters and the whole Venn diagram of the things that you know could happen, the things that you think could happen, and the things that you don't want to happen. It shifts all that around when you're by yourself versus with a group. But also, if you're with a group and everyone is reasonably capable, you can then sort of assign positions and responsibilities within that group of who's going to be doing what. So it makes it a lot easier to literally have 360 worth of eyes and ears all around, so you can respond quicker and more effectively to that. Would not chance it without him. Firearms, I am 100% a person that believes wholeheartedly that one, everyone should know how to properly use them. Hands down, period. Everyone should know how to properly, even the people that don't like firearms, they hate firearms, they go, oh, I don't like the thought of firearms. That's fine. Learn how to use them, properly. So one, you don't hurt yourself if by some chance you come across a firearm, because, doing the whole, ooh, it's a gun, you could end up hurting yourself or someone else. Two, in the event that you're in a situation where even though a firearm hater doesn't like it, they may realize that there's a situation where they need to use one. Better to know how to use it and at least have that. So I'm definitely in favor of firearms as a part of your gear, as a part of your equipment, as a tool, as a force multiplier. Now, in terms of individual types and things like that, I do go by the rule of use what you use best, what you can best handle. So it's not always going to be the biggest. It's not going to be necessarily the most powerful. It's going to be what is the most functional and what you are the most capable with. But with that being said, you really need to know how to use it. So whatever type of platform, whether it's a handgun or it's a rifle, it's a shotgun, whatever it is, get comfortable with it, know how to use it, and be able to use it effectively well within it. I used to have a semi-automatic rifle. I had gotten rid of it, and this was years ago, and it was before I made my pledge to never sell another gun again. But I sold it simply because I didn't enjoy shooting it. Plain and simple. It was, to me, it was a Ruger Mini 14. It was cramped. It was less ergonomic in terms of simply utilizing it. Basic function: load the magazine, chamber around, fire off the rounds, empty the magazine, pull the it just did not flow smoothly for me, no matter what the practice was. I used to do dry drills all the time. I just did not like it. So currently, I don't have a semi-automatic rifle. I have a lever action rifle, which that has now become my intermediate weapon. And with that being said, it's basically, if you look at it this way, the handgun, from my perspective, within terms of I'm in my house, the handgun is I hear the boom, something's going on, bump in the night, get the handgun. Then, if it turns out that something is, let's say, trying to get in the door, I go for the shotgun. That becomes the stay out of my home type of gun. Now, if that threat at that point is still being hostile, then let's say it start engaging me at a medium distance, 50, 75 feet, I go for the lever action rifle. That becomes the get off my lawn and leave me alone. And if we're in, again, that whole Mad Max Thunderdome scenario type of situation, the grid has gone down and the world's gone mad, I've got a bolt action set and zeroed up for 300 yards. That's one of those, if I hit you, it's just the end of that. And if I miss you, take it as a good sign of faith that, God is giving you a second chance in life. Turn around and go the other way. So I make use with what I have, for the simple fact is that that's all I got. I mean, sure, I would love to have one of those Matrix arsenals where it's like, I need guns, and all of these turn into every type of gun I could possibly want, but that's not the case, because firearms are expensive, ammunition is expensive, and even going to practice is expensive, so I make the best of what I can. So my actual go-to, SHTF firearm is going to be a lever action, and that's what I'm going to end up using, so I practice with that. Krieger. Now, as far as everything else goes, firearms, yeah, definitely something to have on there. I saw someone mentioning ham radio license. I still advocate for, while everything is status quo, getting your ham radio operator's license, getting that practice in, getting that familiarity in now, while everything is calm and you can do it at a leisurely pace. Because yes, I mean, I am actually one of those people that I do better under stress than I do when I know I've got plenty of time. It's one of those things, and I'm sure there's plenty of you out there that, if you give me a week to get ready for something, I will be doing absolutely nothing until maybe 12 hours before whatever the event's supposed to be, and then I'm on it. Case in point, even getting ready for this live stream. And I brought all the stuff out, got everything all hooked up, didn't bother to check to make sure that the camera and the computer, laptop, and everything were working together until the actual 7 o'clock period hit. But getting your ham license, practicing, getting used to it, even just working with the equipment itself, doing it now, and even if you don't do it every single day, every single week, just a little regular practice at a time will be much easier than coming across a two-way radio and going, oh, what do we got here? And trying to figure out how to work it, how to communicate, understand what frequencies you're on, who can hear you for where and what you're listening to, because you may pick up something and not realize that, yes, you're hearing them loud and clear because, they're at a base station cranking out 50 watts, but they're 300 miles away, and they're only picking you up because of some errant skip, because you happen to be 200 to 300 feet higher above the mean territory around you for the next 100 miles. So it's like, you're better off knowing the little ins and outs beforehand and have it with you. And I've got small portable radios for my family. Two of my bug out buddies, we all have the same style of radio. They all run on the same set of frequencies, so we can tune into each other and we can communicate with each other. So in the event that we have to do some operational stuff, we have radios already set up that we can do that, and we at least know each other. So even if there are other people listening, we know how to communicate to each other. We know how to put our message forward without giving away certain things, without giving away who we are, where we are, what we're planning to do. And we'll be able to maintain our, radio security through that method. And again, it still comes down to practicing beforehand, even just once or twice, doing it here and there, casual walkthrough, it helps. It makes a significant difference versus jumping into the water ice cold and trying to figure it out while your brain is in shock. Because a lot of stuff, I look at it is what we are prepping for. It's going to be it's going to be a lot harder to do under some conditions because I mean, and again, I feel that I'm talking to a lot of people that have had the same conversations that I've had and been in some of the same situations. Had a guy I used to work with, and this was years ago, and just conversation between me and another coworker. We were talking about silver, gold, precious metals, that type of stuff, bartering and everything. And he was listening in, and he was smirking and laughing about because those prepper guys and everything. And then a couple months later, he was proud of himself. Say, hey, I used some of my paycheck, and I went out and got some silver coins. I heard you guys talking about it. I thought that might not be a bad idea. So ching ching, I got a bag of silver. So if something happens, I'm all good to go. We were like, all right, yeah, thumbs up. And then me and my other coworker were like, should we ask him more details about what he plans to do with it? Because we found out later his mentality was, okay, he's got a bag of silver coins, and there were silver dollars and silver half dollars, which hold a certain value, and it holds it because based upon the year that it's got X amount of silver in it. And so, yeah, you can put it on scale. You can do the little litmus test and say, okay, this is good. Here you go. And if the market's still up, you can look at the spot price of silver and have an idea. But what he's not understanding is, I think in his mentality is, oh, if the ATM machines go down and the credit card systems go down, I can just use my bag of silver to pay for everything. It's still a silver dollar. It's still a silver 50-cent piece. So it's still $1.50. It's not going to have that magical value of, oh, you can pay off your house, your car, and everything else until the entire system collapses. So you walking around with a bag of silver really isn't going to do much other than get you jumped for a bag of silver. It's only after everything has fallen apart where then the paper money holds no real tangible value, and it reverts back to precious metals, gems, jewelry, band-aids, bullets, and cans of beans. Those things become far more valuable. But it is what it is. And even going off into that tangent, as far as having silver and gold, we've done a little, oh, we'll get a couple of coins here and there. I was lucky enough that I had a grandfather that he would do that every now and then, and he's like, oh, here you go, I got 2 of these, I'll give you one. So it's like, hey, thank you very much. But do we have enough that we could pay off the mortgage? No. Do we have enough that we could pay off the car? No. In terms of value, based upon what the market is right now, yeah, we could probably do with, a mortgage payment, not a problem. Utility bill, sure. But that's more or less sitting in the safe, locked up for years down the road. Because, again, even if we were in a collapsed state situation, there's just not enough there of any significant value that suddenly I become the warlord of my neighborhood and I'm sitting on top of piles of gold and everything else. So it's one of those things where people do invest, and if you're investing on a regular basis, then yeah, you're definitely going to have more stocked up. It's no different than having a 401k where if you're only putting in the bare minimum and your company's matching you, you're not going to have as much as the guy that's putting in the maximum and the company's matching in that same amount of time period. So I definitely still feel that in terms of having gold, good to have, having silver, good to have. But in terms of if I have $100 and it's a choice between buying 1/8 of an ounce of gold versus buying extra food, freeze-dried food, bullets, things like that, I'm going to put the 100 towards the more tangible, either the immediate use things or the near future use things in that case. But that's just, me in general. Ooh. Turtle Hermit, if you can brew beer, everyone will be coming to you. That is absolutely, absolutely true. And I actually have a beer brewing kit, and I tried doing that did it for about a year, and it was actually pretty good. My 2 main problems that I had is, one, I am impatient for things like that, which it's always been that way. It's like, if I know something is good, oh, it's gonna be good, it's gonna be good, I cannot wait. I can still remember my mother when I was probably 6, 7 years old. We were gonna make pickles. I love pickles. We're gonna make pickles, And I couldn't wait. And she went through the whole process, and I sat there and I'm watching her, and this is gonna be so great. I'm gonna have pickles, gonna have pickles. Probably about 2 days later, I popped that thing open and I started munching down on what I thought would be a fantastic pickle, not understanding the whole process of pickling takes longer than 2 days. So I didn't get a cucumber, I didn't get a pickle. I got an abomination of vinegar and just, well, bad memories. And honestly, to this day, it's not that I don't like pickles, but I could care less about them. It's one of those things. And when I was doing the beer brewing, I've made probably 3 or 4 different batches and tried out a few different things, and I have a good idea of the process, but it just wasn't for me. And then also add to the fact is I stopped drinking 3 years ago, so at this point, having the kit, good, and I could probably still, if getting all the ingredients together, brew up a batch, and definitely that would be something worth bartering because there are people that if you give them a beer and a pack of cigarettes, they will be your friend for the rest of their life. It does not matter. So it's always good to have some of those vices on hand. Currently, I'm working with, if you've seen the video, fermentation. So I've got inside the refrigerator, actually, I've got the garlic and honey and then the turmeric, ginger and honey fermenting. So we'll see how those turn out in a few weeks. And I'm going to be trying to do some dry cured meat as well, and I've got an idea for doing pemmican, but not pemmican for humans, pemmican for my dogs, basically using the beef tallow and their actual dry dog food and put that together. And pretty much it's going to be a taste test for them because I've got one dog, she is very particular about things that she eats, and I've got another dog who will eat just about anything. So between the two of them, I'll have a good gauge on how it is, but it shouldn't be too bad because it's their dog food. So I'm not using anything extra other than the beef tallow, which I'm not rendering it myself from chunks of meat. I bought it already done in the jar, so now it's just a matter of scooping it out, putting it into the pan, and heating it up and then doing the mix and everything. So again, that's something that I'll have probably in the next week or so. I'll get started on that. But it's small little projects like that I'm trying my hand out to see how it is. Still working away in the garden. And garden update. There's another damn woodchuck, and he's under the greenhouse, but it's a baby one. He's probably about 8 pounds. He's a little four-legged football. He's about that size. I saw him 2 days ago down in the front yard, just sort of in the grass, but I couldn't see where he was coming from. And then just before I came back in, I was bringing one of the dogs in. I just wanted to make sure that I had actually closed the greenhouse door because sometimes I leave it open when I'm in and out, in and out. And I peeked around the front, saw that it was closed, and then I see eyes and then just a fat little body running, and zoop, under the greenhouse he went. And that's the one spot where they had one hole. I plugged it up. They made another hole. I plugged it up. They made another hole, and it's dead in the center. And I can't get to it because it's underneath the floor. And the floor of the greenhouse is actually plywood on top of wooden pallets. So there's no way for me to get directly there, and I can't even get a good angle on it for the gas grenades to get it in there because of the actual spacers and the risers between the pallets. So they're actually well protected. They thought that one out, but I will figure a way to get to them sooner or later, but has not gotten into the garden yet. The fencing's still up there, and I did plant some garlic cloves that I had left over, split some of them open and just put them just beneath the surface, just enough so this way they're around the general perimeter, and it lets off that lovely garlic smell to their sensitive noses to keep them at bay for a little while longer. But that's a whole different thing altogether. But the garden as a whole is doing good. That's doing well. I'm a little concerned about some of the squash. I'm seeing 2 of them are getting a little yellow. I'm not liking that. So I don't know if it was they got too much rain over the last week because we had 2 or 3 days where it would just pour for an hour straight and then stop and then pour again later on and then stop. So I don't know if the drain holes that are at the bottom of the barrels just got clogged and couldn't let out that moisture fast enough. But I'll take a look at it because hopefully the next 2 days it's supposed to be dry, so I'll be able to check the soil to see if it's still squishy and damp or if it's starting to dry up finally. Some of the other things go along with the potatoes, they're starting to come up more, so I've just put another layer on top, and that's working out well. But for me, working in the garden, that's my sort of mental catharsis for me. It's one of those things where, and when I started doing the garden, it was just on a whim. It was one of those things where we just got the house, we're more or less settled in. It was probably the same spring that we actually got the house. I'm like, I want to try growing something. I want to have a garden because that's what you do when you get a house. And, I went to town and I planted a whole bunch of stuff and everything grew. It was fantastic. Mostly because the soil had not been used for gardening ever, just grass, nothing more. And the previous owner had lived there his whole entire life, and he kept pretty good care of everything. The following year, everything that I planted, and when I planted new stuff, more of the nutrients from the soil were getting depleted, and it didn't matter what it was. It just hit to the point where the soil now was returning to its natural form of near clay-like substance, because effectively speaking, that's where the soil is in this area. It's more of a clay-like soil. You have the grass and you have the little bit of the sod underneath it in the roots, and then it's just clay, clay, clay going down 8, 10, 12 inches. And one of my buddies, he would have his tiller out, and every single year he's doing 3, 4 laps with the tiller to keep everything loose, which is great. And he's like, oh, I bring the tiller by, but you got that hill and everything. And I say, not a problem. And I shifted from where my garden originally was, which was a larger, almost, I'd say 20 by 20. And it was a little bit harder to maintain, and the woodchucks were getting in left and right. They were just finding all the weak spots. So I've moved it to where it is presently, smaller, out of the way, easier to maintain, plus doing everything in the container makes it easier to handle. Jacqueline R. These thumbs are not green. They're sort of camouflaged. I will tell you that honestly. They are sort of camouflaged. If I hold them up, they'll disappear against my shirt. Don't worry about not having a green thumb. And depending upon where you're at, the simplest thing I can say is if you want a confidence booster, green beans, they will grow. You at least will have green beans. Peas, they will grow. Beets, carrots, they will grow. They are definitely the easier ones to start with. It's a 50-50 when you've got the different types of lettuce and cabbage and kale, depending upon the soil, yes, and the overall environment. But start with easy things, and I'll say this. When I first started gardening, like I was saying, I went to town. I was planting everything that I could possibly think of, and everything was growing, and I was feeling confident. And as I said, the next year, planted more stuff. Most of it grew. By the third year, almost nothing was growing, or when it did grow, it was lily patooly, and it was small, it was tiny, it was malnourished. It's looking up at me like, please help me. And it's like, at that point, I'm like, all right, this is not working out. We had corn probably for almost 2 years. And then again, it was one of those things where all the nutrients were depleted. So I shifted operations and then scaled everything back. I found that squash did the best for me, but then the problem that I would run into, and all my gardening knowledge comes primarily first from, I think I can do that, and then, okay, I didn't do it the way the other person did, and now I know why, and then it shifts to, okay, here's my new plan. So everything that you see going on in my garden, it goes where I may see something or hear about something, and I think I can do that, and then I implement my version of it, because, close enough is good enough. And then when something doesn't work out at all or not quite the way I thought it would be, I make the adjustment either later in the growing season or for the next year. So a lot of things I upgrade and update are simply because, okay, I did this with this and that wasn't working out well, so I'm going to switch it up and try it for this. But I've been having plenty of luck with, keeping some of the simple things there. Now, in the garden now, I do have a wider variety of things growing, but everything now is all in containers. It's all in 5-gallon food grade buckets. It's all in the planter pots and the big planter barrels and a couple of tubs, things like that, where nothing is in the ground. Again, for the primary reason that it's just too hard to work my soil. There are weeds galore that no matter what, they come through and they choke everything out. Add on top of the fact is I've got some weird soil fungus thing going on in one part of my lawn where it obliterated all the grass, and I think it might be some beetle infestation or something, because there's like creepy crawly holes everywhere, and I got to think about that, and so I don't go over there. It's a whole separate thing altogether, but it's just bad. So I don't want to put anything into the ground that may get affected that way. But depending upon where you're at and what your situation is, that's what you have to make do. And I do kind of like the small gardening using the containers, because I can also move things around. And that's one of the advantages that I really do like about it, is there have been times where I've got things set up and physically something happens. I have to fix part of the fence, or I want to add something. I can shift everything. I had moved, whole sections out to clear up loose debris, and then moved everything back in and moved some of the containers around. But for my setup, that works out well. People that maybe have a balcony or a small patio, it could be the same situation. Using the raised beds and the planters, depending upon where you're at, you could still actually have a viable setup. If you've got, let's say, the smaller planters, raised bed containers, things like that. If you've got those, what do they call them, like burlap sacks that you could use to line into the bottom, so this way the soil that you add all sits and rests in there. You don't get the potential of the bugs and the critters and everything else coming up underneath. You could use, newspaper, layer that down, wet it, layer it down, cardboard, same thing. Keeps the weeds out, helps slow down the bugs. It doesn't eliminate them completely. And yes, we do need those, critters in there to help the natural process and aerate the soil and all that kind of stuff. But some of them, they're root eaters, and they're killing the crop before you even realize it from underneath. And then you've got absolutely nothing except for a withered plant sitting on the top. So you still have a chance to correct that, because at least in that controlled environment, it's easier to manage than the wide open yard. But again, it all depends upon what your yard is set up for. Because we were thinking using it's called diametreous earth. It's a powder-like crystal. There's two types. There's the food grade, which is the type that you should use in your garden. It does help provide some minerals into the soil, but it's primarily good for stopping a lot of the crawling critters that would come and feast around when you've mixed it in, because it acts as an abrasive against their skin. So you're less likely to get some of the larvae and grubs and some of the aphids and the other beetles that will crawl along. Even if they're surface crawlers, if it's on the surface as well, that's going to stick into their joints and get into their little breathing apparatus and everything, and it's going to choke them out, and that's going to be the end of that for them. But it does help with the condition of the soil if you've got a rough, dry, or clay-like soil as well. So there's always some type of like trick or tip that you can do. Earthworms, yeah. I got plenty of worms in my compost bin. I was doing some yard work earlier, and I kicked up a small patch of like a dead wood chip or something. It's probably about that big. Underneath there's like 5 or 6 night crawlers just sort of hanging out. They didn't know what to do, so I took my trowel, scooped them up, boom, into the compost bin. The compost bin, that to me, tying back in with barterable goods, the soil in the compost bin, that's true black gold right there. Because that's usually what I use on top of everything. I'll use the store-bought stuff, because even though the containers are small, I don't have enough ready compost to fill all of them up. So I use my compost as the topper. I'll take, 5-gallon bucket. It'll get a half of a bag of just topsoil, and then maybe an eighth to a quarter of a bag of the, organic growing soil, the potting soil mix. Then I'll put the seeds in, and then I'll cover it with the compost material on top, so those nutrients trickle down and work their way through the soil. So eventually that regular topsoil at the bottom is still able to contain a lot of the nutrients. So as whatever the plant is growing, especially if it has deeper set roots, it's still getting nutrients down towards the bottom of the container. So that's what I use my compost for, and that soil is fantastic. I mean, it's pretty much the way it's set up. I just give it a little move around with the trowel, and then scoop, throw some into a small pail, scoop, 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 whatever I need, and then I pour it out however I need it. And that has been the best thing. I had a larger compost bin before, and that was where my error was. It was a big set of pallets set up, so it was pretty much 4 square pallets, 3.5 feet high, and it held a lot. But 2 problems I had is, 1, getting into it to get everything out, and then 2, because it was so widespread, it didn't retain the heat as well to help with the decomposition. So the stuff at the very bottom was very rich and deep with nutrients, but you couldn't reach it, and you still had all the other raw, undone stuff sitting on top. Whereas in the black garbage can that I've got, it gets heat all the way around, lid closed, it heats up, but I can still get in there, I can still reach. I've not emptied it out yet, but I've gone where I'll dig and take everything from one side, and then after a while shift the stuff that's on top into that hole, and then start putting new stuff on top of that as we're throwing in like the food scraps and things. And I do lawn debris, so if my yard clippings, I'll put those in, layer those in, mix it up, and it keeps it pretty damn healthy. I've got a separate leaf bin just for regular leaves that I use as mulch now on top. I had used pine shavings because I put that originally down on the floor in the actual garden itself. But pine shavings still, again, cost money. So using the leaves that I'm raking up anyway, I can crumble those up, sprinkle those over in a nice little layer on top, and it's good to go for mulch to help keep the soil moist, but also help control and regulate the temperature. So when there is those weather drops where it's been sunny and 70, but then for whatever reason it's going to drop down to 38 degrees that night, my plants won't get too shocked and the roots won't be too disturbed for any of the cold air that makes its way into, especially if it's still moist, freezing the water up. That's the last thing I need, is to have the roots get frozen, especially for some of my surface plants. Let's see what we got here. Would not recommend copper outside these. Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard copper can help the garden. The only thing I can think of, and I tried it on, I think, 2 of my plants, I didn't really see any significant difference, was just copper wiring, small thin copper wiring, twist it up, stick it down in there. I get the principle of if it's pure copper, it's going to leach off through the natural process, the minerals in it, adding to it, and I understand the theory of the ethereal connection in terms of the static electricity energizing and everything, almost like if you were making an earth battery as an example, where you have the 2 rods into the soil and all the actual metal minerals in the soil form a battery, and they exchange an electrical charge, very, very low charge. And I get all that, but I didn't see any real significant difference in the plants that I had done that with to say, oh, this is definitely something that I want to try on all of them. But as far as having it, it's a no harm, no foul. I mean, you can go to a hardware store, get yourself, a small spool of copper wiring. They'll maybe cost you $5-6. So if you're doing it just for that purpose, it's not a big deal. I mean, I definitely understand that people steal copper, but the person that's going to steal copper, they're going to go for a source that they know it's going to be there. They're going to go to that house under construction or that house that's been abandoned because they know there's copper piping and copper wiring in the walls, in the floor. That's going to be easier for them to steal than the random garden where they go, I wonder if. Now, again, if we're in a desperate situation where people are that desperate to steal copper and they're stealing it out of your garden, whether it's a wind chime or anything else, that's a whole different ballgame altogether. So it's like there's certain levels where I'm willing to concede, yes, there always will be that one person that you read about in the news that goes and does something like that, and you think, really? You're not going to steal like a ton of copper, 100 feet of copper out of a building, something reasonable. You're going to go around to people's gardens and taking the small bits of copper that they have planted with their food. But again, there's always that one person, no matter what, in any society. I feel there's always been that one guy that ends up being that way. Now, as far as, I've been going on for a while here, as far as everything else, as far as my prepping for, let's say, our current world events, where do I begin? I will start with what I said earlier. There's only so many things you can reasonably prepare for, and there's, I'd say, fewer things that you have full control over. As far as the global events go, my opinion matters not. It's not going to change a thing of what's going on. No one is going to go, hey, the Urban Sentinel said, and then the world leaders are going to be like, yeah, he's got a point on. No, doesn't matter. So I look at it this way. Certain things are going to happen. If they do, Nothing I can do about it. I can acknowledge that, things can go bad really, really fast. I can acknowledge that depending upon what that bad is and how far it reaches out, will make a determination on how I need to change our family setup, our emergency plans, and everything else from that point going forward. And I fall back to one extent to, I'll say I fall back to a lot of it is my childhood. I'm Gen X, 1970, grew up through the 80s, during the time period where 50% of the movies were more or less about the world coming to an end, which was fine for me because at that point in time, I hated school. So if you told me an asteroid was coming and it could knock everything out, good, won't have to go to school. If you told me the Russians, the Soviets were getting ready to invade and it was going to be World War III, great, don't have to finish that report. If you told me that the San Andreas fault line was going to sever and drop California off into the ocean and the power would go out across the country and everything would revert back to like the 1800s for technology, fantastic. I can sleep in, That was my mindset then because it was bring on the apocalypse, just make sure it's after I put the trash out type of thing. And that has changed. And yes, on the realistic adult level, I understand that if there's some major global disaster or even just some major event just here for us in the United States, it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be fun for anyone. It's not going to be enjoyable on any level. But saying that out loud, having that in my mindset, I'm not going to be shocked by it. I'm not going to be surprised by it. I'm not going to be, I can't believe it. And I'm not going to be taken aback and brain frozen on trying to wrap my head around it. I'll say, okay, now it's real. It's not a dry run. It's not a practice. This is the live event. Here we go. And I move forward from there. So if, for example, Russia and Ukraine and it goes nuclear. Let's just call it just goes nuclear. Somebody had one, they hit the button and boom, it goes off. If it's going off over there and it's just over there, still no direct effect here for us. That's just the way it is. We're going to watch it on the news. We're going to see it on our phones. It's going to be, worldwide coverage, but still no direct effect for us. Now, the ripple effect will be later on. The ripple effect will be in commerce, will be in travel. The ripple effect will be people will be watching the Weather Channel very, very closely after that. That's the key thing. I watch the weather every day, mostly because of work. But in the event that something like that does happen, people will want to know what the wind speed and wind direction is going from point A to wherever their point B is, because they want to know how long do they have to potentially either get out of the path of what that could bring or prepare for it coming and sheltering in place depending on what the situation is. So it's one of those cases where, my house is not designed to withstand a nuclear blast, period. I make no bones about that. My video on making the fallout shelter was not the video about making a blast-proof bunker. It was about the bomb went off 60, 70, 120 miles away. You're physically not affected by the actual blast, not by the heat, the shock wave, the fireball, the flash, none of that. But the fallout is drifting and coming your way, and you've got no place else to go, and you couldn't go anywhere anyway because you would be behind a line of 15,000 other cars of people trying to all get out and get away at the same time. And people never take that into account, that even when you've got that plan, you've got that location, you've got everything, you have to already be there before that goes off. So our plan is always, there are things when we know, okay, if this is a threat, if this is a danger, in direct comparison to, what was it, East Palestine, Ohio, was it? Where the tanker truck with the toxic chemicals derailed, blew up, and put that big, huge plume up in the air of black toxic smoke. In a situation like that, definitely you want to get out. And in small towns, you only have so many roads. But also the other advantage is in a small town, you have fewer people. And even in the neighboring towns, there are still usually fewer people. So while there may be traffic that you aren't accustomed to, you're far less likely to get locked in on the road, bumper to bumper in those situations, unless someone up ahead is driving like like an a-hole and sidelines their truck across the one bridge that people need to get off, and now no one can get across it. That's a different situation altogether, but you can plan on escaping. But when you're in a medium-sized town to a small city, neighbored by other medium-sized towns and small cities, you're just going to be nut to butt no matter where you are, on the highway, on the main roads, on the back roads, because everyone has that, oh, we're not going to take the highway, we're not going to take the main city streets, we're going to take this back road that somehow only I think I know about, and that'll get us out to this other town. And you turn that left, you take that right, you go down, you cross the bridge, you look, and all of a sudden, bam, nothing but brake lights ahead as far as you can see, because every other person also thought they were the only person that knew that one little way in and out of a town. And that's where you end up getting stuck in. So as far as sheltering in place, depending upon what that situation is, you got to make that decision. It's like I did that video on the basis that it's one of those, my phone goes off with the emergency alert system. It's 4 o'clock in the morning and I can barely read it, and the only thing I see is nuclear blast and a location that my brain does the math and says, oh, that's 1,500 miles away. You can take a snooze, and I go back to sleep for the next 15 minutes, think about what I need to do, and then when I wake back up again, start putting the plans into motion as far as what can be done in the house immediately versus what we need to look for over the next coming hours to days as things shift. And that's one of those situations where you look at it, and it would be bad to have nuclear devices go off. It's never going to be enjoyable, but you also look at it depending upon where it is and how badly it gets. You can then start to think about where you fall within that level of ebb and flow to mitigate whatever little outcome may come your way. In some cases, it just may be one of those things where if it happens, it does, and it literally stays over there. Nothing more, nothing less, and it's just a mark on the calendar next year in history. On this day, a nuclear device was used against another nation in, a hostile act type of thing. And that's all that there is. If it's something that goes beyond that, well, you really won't have to worry about marking your calendar at that point, because it would be kind of useless. You just move forward from trying to get through the next 72 hours, 96 hours, 128 hours. And to one extent, and this is going to sound bad, I'm not a petty person to the extent that I look to be petty and vindictive, but I set mental marks. In a situation like that, realistically, find any 10 people, 8 out of those 10 will have no clue how to be prepared or prepare themselves for that type of event. 2 will. And then of the 2, one of them probably is the most prepared or more prepared physically, mentally. Everything's kind of already lined up. The other one has the potential. They know the process. They just haven't put it into action. My goal would be obviously to be one of those 2. It's mostly to outlive the other 8. So if I can outlast the other 8, when they drop off, all their shit's mine. Wherever it is, whatever it is. It sounds bad. I know it is. But that's my mentality. My mentality is more on, I just need to outlast the other people. It's like the old saying of, you can never outrun a bear, which is true. They run over 30 miles an hour. You can't outrun it, period. You just have to be faster than the person that you're with. That's the key thing. So if it's your survival and someone else's survival, you just need to make sure that you can outlast them, because once they drop off, one, any resources they were using are now yours. Any resources they hadn't acquired yet are now yours. And any resources that they still had but they hadn't used, or they didn't use them properly, are now yours. Now, am I, wishing ill on anyone? No. But I am just stating the simple fact is that there are going to be a lot of people that are not prepared and they're not going to survive. A week going by of eating, Cheetos and Diet Coke for a lot of people in this country may seem like a dream come true. It's like, yeah, we go to the convenience store, we get all the Cheetos, we get all the Diet Coke. They will be dead in 3 days. They will be dead in 3 days. And anything and everything that you could find of possible use, you just pick through whatever it is, because they're not going to have any use for it. They're gone. And then anyone else outside of that, probably over the next 5 to 20 days, they're going to be passing away because they had an idea, but they just couldn't catch up quick enough to put it into motion. They were behind that. They were behind the 8 ball, as it were, knowing that there was a way out, but they just didn't move fast enough because either they didn't know it or they flip-flop back and forth thinking about, well, should I this, should I that? Maybe we do, maybe we don't. And certain times that there's a level of indecisiveness that can get you killed, either immediately or over a period of time. And so that's sort of the way I look at prepping. It's not a competition, but you want to win. That's the main goal of prepping. Prepping is in the competition of surviving, living. You want to be a winner. It's one of those things where, in a case like this, you can say that not everyone will be in first place, but there is a clear, defined difference between being a winner and being a loser, a passing or a failing within that world of emergency preparedness in certain disasters, certain situations. Now, that's absolutely not to say that just because you prep that you will be bulletproof when it comes to any disasters, any harm, anything like that. Absolutely not. I mean, shit happens. It doesn't matter. And, if it happens and you succumb to some illness, some sickness, some injury, and even with the knowledge that you have and the gear that you have, you may not be able to stop it, reverse it, or what have you. It's just going to be the way that it is. But again, I still fall back on I'd rather have 1,000 okay, mediocre, questionable plans than none at all, because at least from that pool of bad ideas, and I got a lot of them, I can kind of pick and choose what I think is going to work out, what may or may not be the right thing for me to do in that immediate moment. And depending upon the situation, I may say to myself, okay, I'm going to try this one first, and then if that doesn't work out, I'm going to try this. There's only so many things that can go wrong until something kills you, so you still have a little bit of lead time ahead versus having no idea, no clue, and no plan, and just sort of hoping for the best. That's not necessarily something that I want to rely on. Water, but yeah, I make that's one of the things I do. The city line valve down on my street, I keep that cleared from the grass and everything else, so I know where to do it. And I've got two tools already just set up that they're the right length to get down into the pipe and shut off the water, and then I can still turn it off on the valve on the inside here to keep it off from there. The only thing I have not done yet, which I'm just procrastinating on it, is on our water outflow pipe. We've got the inspection cap that the plumber would use to take a look down through there. I want to replace the cap because it's just the standard like 6-inch cap on. I want to replace that with an actual valve stopper for the purpose that I don't want literally city shit backing up into our house if there's some main problem going on, which has happened in the city here and there on a few rare occasions. But again, it's one of those situations where that's the last thing you want, is to either have a situation like that happen. Now, granted, you got to be home to turn it on, and if it happens while you're out, well, it happens while you're out. But in certain situations, especially in a situation where there is a major issue with the water system, with the sewage system, then that would be something that I personally would look at saying, yeah, I want to be able to cut the system off. I've got emergency toilets. Literally, you go pee in a bucket and you don't have to worry about flushing anything. So, a lot of my ideas, like I said, a lot of my ideas come from childhood upbringing, trial and error. Sometimes it's watching other people do certain things, and it's always the armchair general thing. You see the news event and you go, well, why didn't they just do that? Or he should have done this, or I would have done this at that. And granted, again, everybody in every situation is going to behave a little differently, and you never know when your butt is literally on fire how exactly you're going to respond. You may think that, oh, I will do this, this, and this, and then you end up doing something less graceful and less aesthetically appealing to put the fire out. That's always the way that it is, but I still keep those mental notes and those scenarios in my head, because it's always that situation where the most bizarre scenario that could pop up is more likely going to be the one that you end up facing. And that's going to be the one that you're like, oh, I did not conceive of that happening at all. Now, granted, that's within the scope of realism, within the scope of things that would normally happen. I personally, currently in my life, I do not prepare for, as an example, alligators and crocodiles, because they're not around here. I've come across bears. I've had a bear in my backyard. I've been at work, and all of a sudden there's a bear on the other side of the bush. I scared it. Luckily, he ran away. So I'm prepared to deal with bears. I've dealt with coyotes. I've had my run-ins with a fox who, he and I, we had a little eye to eye, and we both decided that he should go that way and I'll go that way. But I don't prepare for certain things because certain events aren't in my area. I don't keep, effectively speaking, a volcano plan at the top of my head because no volcanoes around here, no active volcanoes. Now, wildfires and industrial fires completely different. Volcano, no. So do have gas masks for that, do have the extinguishers, do have plans on what to do with the property in those situations. So it all depends upon what it is. Slasher. Me? I'm in Connecticut. That's where I'm at. I'm at the bottom of New England, southern New England, so dirty south down here in New England. And probably I'd say I'm an hour and 45 minutes between Boston and New York City, capital city Hartford. That's where people know. People know Hartford, people know New Haven. Occasionally people know Bridgeport and New London, or even with New London, I would just say the casinos, and then you go Foxwood and Mohegan Sun, and that's out in that area. But my geographic area it's suburban slash small city wedged between two metropolitan areas. So even in disaster situations, anything that happens big in New York or happens big in Boston, I pay attention to because we get the after effects, we get the ripples, we get the pass throughs of everything going on. When Hurricane Sandy hit, Hurricane Sandy did some damage in Connecticut without a doubt. Nothing compared to what it did for Manhattan, for the five borough areas in that whole area, because there was a completely different scenario than what we had up here. We were able to adapt and adjust, but what we did see was we saw an increase of people leaving from that area that had family, friends, or could even find a Motel 6 up in Connecticut to stay in while everything else was getting flushed out and cleaned out and everything else. So, depending upon what a scenario occurs, I don't excuse me. Ooh. Oh, I've been talking for so long. I don't specifically look at all my disasters. Oh my God. All my disasters from just my state. I look at what's happening in New York City, what happens in Boston, because if it's big enough, we're going to get some spillover, and we're going to have some issues depending upon what that actual situation is. Even going back to 9/11, just it happened. I was at work, and I had two my boss and a former coworker. I knew that they were in that area where they were in the five boroughs because I used to work down in that area. I gave them a call. I said, "Hey, you guys all right? Where are you at?" It's like they said they had just crossed over. They were in Jersey doing a meeting when it all happened. So they went to a location where they could actually see from their spot in Jersey where the towers were at that time period, because I knew that that's where they were during that day, because that's where I would have been down there anyway. And it's one of those things where it's like, of all the different times, it's like, things like that happen. But back then, didn't have a plan for that. That was something that had not immediately crossed into my mind of I should have a plan for this type of event. Afterwards, now I do. I've got, those little squirrels running around in my head, making up all those little plans. Yeah, I will say definitely for the people there, I mean, there's no getting around that no matter how you look at it. That for a lot of people probably changed and shaped their entire landscape, their mental process of what they're going to do and how they're going to move forward. Even for a lot of people, I mean, I will give it this way. I like New York. I've always enjoyed going there, visiting there. Even when I was working in that area, I still loved it. The life and the vibrancy of it is something that I enjoy, but I enjoy it more because sort of like when I go to family functions, there's a lot of people there, a whole lot of people there, too many people there. It's fun, and I like it in the moment, but I love leaving and coming back to, yeah. So for me, I still love New York City. There are some people that, oh, I can't stand it. I still love it, and I haven't been there in a while, but it's one of those things where when that happened, the mental strength that I feel that you have to not say, you know what, we're out of here, and pack up and leave and pull out. And granted, you can say some people have no place to go. Everyone has some place. Sometimes it's not the best place, but everyone can find someplace else to go. So if you choose to stay, hopefully the people that have stayed there from that day forward are more mentally prepared for something like that. It doesn't necessarily mean to be on edge, because I think we all were as a nation on edge for quite a while. You know, every single bump, every single whistle, every single thing that went on, you're looking, you're wondering, is this going to be the next one? But I feel that New Yorkers should be more prepared. And to make light of a certain situation, honestly, there's what, a dozen movies where New York City is getting attacked, bombed, submerged, frozen, invaded, sent back through time. You name it, it has happened. There should at least be, for an average New Yorker, a template of movies, like the top 5 New York City disaster movies that you watch and you decide, yep, I still want to live in New York City. And once you go there with that thought in mind. Make your preps that way. Everyone else outside of it, you know, we look into the fish tank and seeing all the things that are going on and wonder, well, are we really able to do that? You know, it happens. Jason Takes Manhattan, yes, and I will say this: that was the last Friday the 13th movie that I ever went to. I went with this girl. We showed up, and it was us, and I think there were 3 other people in the movie theater. And initially I thought, hey, this is great. We got here before everybody. No, no. It was just so bad that it was just bad. And I think for me, it's one of those things where certain things become a permanent mark in my head. And at that point, all the Friday the 13th movies from that movie forward, couldn't care less. I've never seen one entire Friday the 13th movie after that. I've seen the trailers when they come up, and since having YouTube and everything else, I'll see like a clip. Nope, go right by it. I have no interest. But it's one of those things where, yeah, it was just bad. It was bad, and it was bad for. It would be excusable if Jason Takes Manhattan was done in like 81, 82. You could say, oh, it was bad because it was the 80s. Because a lot of the movies in the 80s, objectively speaking, were actually bad movies. When you go back and you look at them now, the plot was bad, the acting was bad, the effects, everything was bad on it. But at the time period, you didn't care. You just went in, you sat down, you paid all of maybe $4 or $5 to get a ticket, a large popcorn, a large drink, and you're just having fun. But then you look at the movie itself and you go, no, that was just a bad movie overall. But Jason Takes Manhattan, absolutely, hands down, was the worst. Escape from New York, yeah. Escape from New York, when I was younger, seemed less plausible. But as I got older, especially after being in New York City, to one extent, it is more plausible. It's more improbable to wall off all of Manhattan based upon simply, oh, we're going to turn Manhattan into a national prison. We're going to wall it off. One, what factory are you getting all of that concrete made up? Because New Yorkers are impatient. There's no way in hell that you're going to be able to wall off all of Manhattan without them knocking half of that stuff down before it even gets set into the ground. That's the first thing. Second, sheer number of people. There's just too many people to try to do that. Now, to say you're going to cordon off a section, you can isolate Manhattan. You blow the bridges, block the tunnels. Yeah, you can isolate it, and then you just have constant patrols on the East River and the Hudson coming up around. Have a big old watchtower set up at the top with Rikers scanning through the canalways and everything else like that. But walling it off, I don't see. Blocking off the bridges and tunnels, that's a definite thing to do, because unless someone has their own like helicopter and they've got air support to fly them out real quick, or they've got a really fast boat that they can take out from the harbor and get past whatever shore patrol you have. But yeah, Escape from New York would definitely be one of those disaster type of movies that still holds a certain level of I'd say street level grit when you look at it. And actually, The Warriors. Now, I'm 55. That was not a movie for kids to watch on TV, but TV was different back then. There were no laws. But the Warriors would be more akin to what I feel things would become, not too unlike some cities that we have right now where the gangs start to control territories beyond just simply spray tagging, a wall here and a wall there and saying, oh, on this side of this street, where they're out and they're patrolling their hood, they're actually maintaining control and there's overt confrontation between other gangs and people. That I can definitely see being something that would happen in one of those major disaster situations because the gangs are already there. So it's not as if they have to form up. They're already in existence. They already know where their territory is. They already know the territory that they want to take and they have an idea of what to do. It's just a matter of, oh, we have no actual law enforcement to worry about. The cops are either coming into the neighborhood at all because of it, or it's a whole grit down situation and it's every person for themselves. So I can definitely see the existing street gangs right now making a major problem in one of those scenarios. But hopefully, and it sounds strange to say it that way, but hopefully you would have an equal or greater number of basically armed and prepared citizens to basically hold them off, to keep them at bay, to say, yeah, you may be running the streets in this neighborhood, but we are controlling the neighborhood. We're not going to let you come down the street, go door to door, floor to floor, pulling people out, beating them up, doing whatever you want to do to them. You might get to one house, and then when you come out, you're going to find that we're surrounding you, and now the tables have turned type of situation. Yeah, and also with the Warriors, the last time I think I was down in Coney Island, we were down there, and the wife and I we were with our kids, and they were asking why they have all these like T-shirts and everything, and we told them it's like it's a movie. Again, not the greatest movie, but it's a movie that was effectively done in this area. So it's like one of the pinnacles of the whole entire scene setup. And so I don't think either one of them watch it because they have a list of effectively movies that we say, oh yeah, you should watch this movie, but because we're the parents, they're not going to watch it, or at least not right away. But The Warriors definitely was one of those movies that, as a kid, again, my mentality was that could happen. Now, granted, back in the 70s and the 80s, thinking that could happen wasn't as close to reality. But now here we are, 2025, getting past the disappointment of Blade Runner and no flying cars. I've almost gotten over that. But here we are, 2025, and it seems that we're almost becoming a retrograde in certain societal aspects where things like that would be more likely to happen now than they would have back then. Lisa Mendez. Yes, I do. We are, I won't say an organized group, but I've got on my hand five actual people that no hesitation. I call them up, they call me up, and I've had a situation where one of my buddies called me up, said, "Hey, I need your help." I said, "What do you need?" That's it. We go. So I do have a group of guys that I know and that I trust that we will all help each other. That's extending within the family. So if I say, "Hey, I got a situation, can't go into it, can you come by?" Or "I got a situation, I need you to do this for me." Or they call me up, say, "Hey, need a favor, can you go and get this or can you do this?" Not a problem. If we get into that type of situation where we are actually basically going tribal, then yeah, we do have some loose plans in terms of whose house do we rendezvous at, depending upon what the situation is. Where do we move if we have to actually evacuate? And then it comes down to the vehicle setup, the lineup, because the other slight advantage we have now is all of our children are all older. So they can all drive, which that takes the burden off of effectively trying to drive and navigate and do a lot of stuff. Now we have all adults. So that's the advantage on our end, is that our force capability has become greater. But yeah, it's a strong group I've had with me for going on 20 years now. We've known each other 20 plus years. And and it may surprise some of you. I am not an easy person to actually get along with. You can ask my wife, but it for the people that I call my friends, and more specifically the people that call me their friend, the bond is good. The bond is strong. I've got buddies that I have not seen in years, and we pick up right as if we just saw each other the day before. I've got other friends that are close by. We don't see each other as often because we're always working, but we try to make time, once or twice, we communicate on the phone, whatever it is. So we just keep things up and going. And so, yeah, it's always one of the situations where that's one of the things I don't worry about is if some major something like that happens, then I'm good to go. Larif Larson. And honestly, it depends upon where you're at, and granted, yes, it's easier if you find people that think like you and have that same idea, that same mentality, but you might not find it all in one. You might find, let's say you're at the garden center all the time and you're just browsing, looking at things. Maybe you're talking to some of the people asking about certain plants or certain potting ideas or equipment. You may start to recognize regular people there too. Have a conversation, casual conversation. It's like, oh, I could have sworn this was cheaper last week. They're raising the price of just anything. You may find that you might find a group. Now, people have told me, oh yeah, Facebook Marketplace, you go on there, you can find. I personally, I'm not a Facebook person because I'm just not. When it first came out, I was like, hey, Facebook, that's neat. I can get a hold of all the people that I went to high school with. And then, that was fun for a little while. And then I realized that, well, I really don't talk to these people anyway for the reasons I don't talk to them. So, that was the end of that. But you can make a group, you can find a group. It may not necessarily be that everyone is a jack of all trades. You just might find that one person who's into gardening like you. Then you might find another person that is good at automotive repair, or another person that took electronics training at a shop school and they can repair anything electrical. You piecemeal your group together, and then you sort of introduce them to each other in conversation. So you might be talking to your automotive friend about a conversation you had with your gardening friend. See if they're interested. See if something, oh, that sounds pretty interesting, or they enjoyed the conversation that you were having. Connecting them that way. So it's not specifically a formalized, we gather here today, the group of we shall not give two F's about it. You just have this association of people that eventually you can sort of mold together and bring in as a group. And again, you still have to know to one extent where their mind is at when it comes to emergency preparedness. Are they someone who's totally against it? Someone doesn't believe that it's necessary? Are they someone that is into it but to a limited extent? Or are they a person that you didn't think they were, but they're full on bunker in the basement and all that kind of stuff? But again, there's always a way to kind of do these things. Not always going to be easy. I can tell you that. Not always going to be easy. When I was living by myself for a while, I had a few friends from basically high school that I would try to keep up with, but we were all living in different areas, doing different things. And even when I was working, really wasn't connecting with anyone. It was like I was doing a lot of second and third shift too, so it was a totally different environment. And it was, of that sort of mental mindset of I've just got to stay here till the sun rises and then I can go home. And so I didn't look for making any real connections with anyone. Then later on, job changes, things like that, and I started to make a few friends and start to branch out and that sort of stuff. And it's just one of those things where I sort of gravitated to certain areas, and then the people around there, we all sort of came together a little bit here, a little bit there, and then from that, I get the group that I've got. And some of the people that I have, they're still friends, but they're friends that I have not communicated with in a while. But they're not on my list of, oh, if something goes down, boom, I need to get a hold of them. Something goes down, I've got that group, like I said before, and we're pretty much all together. And we're all not all directly connected. Some of them have never met the others. They know of them, but they've never met them. So they're aware that there are other people within the circle. They just don't know who they are. So it's not a matter of keeping it compartmentalized. It's just the simple fact is there's never been an occasion to gather everyone all together at once. Eh, I want to say I disagree. I will say it's not hard to trust city people. It's harder to trust people in certain environments, depending upon where you're at. Now, granted, in a bigger city with a large population and a lot of things going on, you have people that are looking always to get over on someone. And it's hard to do in a smaller community because you know that person. It's like, is that Daryl? Yeah, Daryl, he's the one that's always trying to scam you for something. So in a small town, you're going to spot him. Daryl's not going to have any success. But in a big city, he can go street by street, block by block, lunch hour, breakfast, dinner, and get over on a dozen and a half people, and no one will ever know because he's an individual person to each one of them that they've only seen that one time. But he's come across 12 people and made his money, pulled his scam, did whatever he's got to do. But I think it really comes down to the mentality of what you're looking at and who you are engaged with depending upon the area. Because the other advantage is in a city, you can have a broader pool of people that you could pull from to use resources and gather together. But again, you got to sort of like, you got to dig through the weeds to find that four-leaf clover as it goes. You know, that's really what it comes down to. Yeah, 2020, that was, I feel that that was definitely a social dynamic test to see exactly how the tribe mentality forms, how it fractures, you know, where certain things fall throughout that whole area. And I've watched plenty of those videos, especially people that are doing their own vlogs about certain things. And sometimes you think about it and you listen to it and you think, so what you're saying is in the course of 2 weeks, you just disowned 99% of the people that you knew, loved, trust, people that even in some cases raised you, literally raised you. You're just like, done with you. Done. And I feel, my opinion, it's less about the character of the people that they let go, but more about them because that would be the person in the group that when you send them out to go look for supplies and then two raiders come up and say, hey, tell us where your camp is and we'll let you live. They go, it's right over there. And then they sell you out. So it's like, for me, I'm not trusting that. If you're willing to flip that coin that quickly, can't really trust you on that one. But again, everyone has their own personal take on it. And for me, I stay out of it, you know, because literally it's in the past. Nothing we can do about it. Now, as far as like the next go around, and I say it in a joking way, like, you know, because it was purely coincidental. It was a natural thing. Not going to say anything about that to upset the YouTube gods. But in the next event that happens, I guarantee you there are going to be a lot more people that are going to be questioning things that are going on, no matter what. Because sometimes, as I say, the math just doesn't math, and you know, you can't trust the science if you can't trust the scientists. But that's all I'll say on that part. I mean, if you're asking when I think that will be, I will say I have no idea. I like to feel that I can, you know, keep my finger on the pulse of certain things, but I can say it could be tomorrow. It could be 3 years from now. I don't know. There's nothing that I can look back on over the last 5, 6, 8 years to say, oh yeah, here's the pattern, here's the pattern, here's the pattern, and then boom, the action. There's nothing that I personally see. I could be completely oblivious to it, but I haven't found anything looking back at certain things to see if there was something that we just weren't seeing, something that was well before anything really made the news, really made the headlines. I mean, or if it very well could be soon. I mean, to say no would be completely egotistical. It's easier for me to say I don't know. It could be tomorrow. It could be again 10 years from now. I'll bring that back. I won't say 10 years from now because that's just way too far ahead. A lot of the things that have been going on, they're going on in a shorter time frame because it's almost like A/B testing a thumbnail for a video. You know, you got one out and it goes out and you're getting responses from that, and then you've got the other one that goes out and you're getting responses from that, and then you get all that data back in, and you go, this one got a better response. Let's go with this one. And that's the one that goes out full board. So I feel that 10 years too far ahead, definitely going to be closer. I will say I'll put my money, my Vegas, bet on black money on within 5 years. So before or by 2030, we're going to have, yeah, by 2030, we're going to have the next big thing. And depending upon how that big thing goes, everything right now, I can say this, everything right now, the Ukraine, Russia, the, Israel, Hamas, the current state of the Middle East, the entire South American and lower North American drug cartel thing, all of that going on could be stepping stones that we're not seeing them as the actual stepping stones leading to something. We're just seeing them as individual actions and activities where they're at. It could reach a point where they all start to merge and all become interconnected. And then at that point, when we go, oh, this is directly linked to this, which is affecting that, which is the reason why this is happening. And then boom, the next event way up here. And at that point, it's already up, it's overhead, no place else to go. That can definitely happen. So I will say that's why I feel that probably 2025 to 2030, if we are not already in the build up process to this next event, it's coming. And like I said, there's some things you're not going to be able to do anything about. Absolutely nothing about. It's just going to happen, and you're just going to have to adapt and adjust to it as it goes. Yeah, Jacqueline Art. Yeah, definitely. Anything can jump off at any point in time, without a doubt. And it can be the craziest thing. Even with, I think it was Russia just yesterday, either yesterday our time or yesterday their time, and earlier this morning, they launched a couple of intermediate range missiles. They did the proper notification of telling the United States, hey, we're going to launch some intermediate ICBMs. They're non-nuclear, and we're not pointing them at you. We're targeting, Ukraine with them, just giving you the heads up. And then we acknowledge, okay, we received it, we understand it, go ahead, do what you got to do. Situation like that could easily become, they go and launch that, but maybe they launch another missile that they didn't tell us about, and we misinterpret that missile as being, oh, it's a ruse, they're actually attacking us, so then we respond. Or someone else finds out about it and they take the opportunity to say, hey, the Russians are going to launch a non-nuke over at Ukraine. Why don't we take one of those old nukes that we have on standby and roll that sucker into that area and have it go off? And then it's a big oopsie. The Russians lied, and then of course there's going to be a global response from that. That would be, I would say, a plausible. It would have to be, to a certain extent, they'd have to know where that target's going to be to detonate a nuke there. But if you basically had any one of the 24 suitcase nukes that have been missing since the Soviet Union collapsed, and you've loaded that thing up into a 50-gallon barrel and it's on a truck or on a train or some other transport and it's made its way in, that could happen. I still thoroughly, which, again, I'm not trying to jinx anything. This is the things that go through my head. I still expect a major terrorist attack coming through the shipping ports. So let's say you've got a nuclear warhead and it's armed and ready. It's in a shielded container. Nothing is picking it up. It's been transported inside a regular cargo container loaded up with, Hello Kitty dolls from Taiwan or something. And it's made its way into the ports, coming into the Port Authority of New York or Long Beach, California, wherever it is. Doesn't have to be a big nuke. Doesn't have to be a city killer. Just could be 10 kilotons. Doesn't have to be much at all. But it would be enough that if one of those went off, and then a second one went off, and the third one went off, first of all, we're shutting down every single port. Nothing's coming in. Everything's going to get searched, so everything stops in the U.S. And then if you find out that, hey, some of these containers, they figured it out, are on trains halfway across the country, where we're shutting down the trains, that would be a more dramatic, yes, type of attack, I think, than what we've seen. But it would also be more plausible, because I really feel that in terms of terrorists trying to do bad things to the U.S. and even hostile countries, they're not willing to admit. I feel Iran, if they had the chance, they would do some type of attack, but they don't want to do it where their hand is on it, when they're holding the wire. They don't want to do it then because it's too easy for us to follow the trace back. But if Iran is in the middle of negotiations and talks and, trying to scale things down, and then over here suddenly, oh, we heard about a nuclear bomb going off in California, and then one down in the refineries in Houston, and then one over in Norfolk, Virginia, and then one over in New York City. Oh, it's too bad that we were over here with our hands signing this peace agreement. We had nothing. I could see that happening because it would insulate them in the direct way where no one could immediately point a finger at them. And the group that would carry it out, well, they're all toasted anyway because they're going to be on board the ship, on board the vessel, in the container vehicle waiting to set it off. So I look at it as that's a plausible way for something big to happen, a big shock and awe type of event, because small little things, pecking here, pecking there, yes, that can get us onto high alert, and that's the problem. When there's small events, we look at them and go, there's something, there's something, there's something, and we up our level of security, we up the level of scrutiny. That makes it harder for people to actually commit attacks. But if it's a big event, something just huge, that stops everything, and then our focus becomes on how did this happen and what do we need to do to stop this. We're not paying attention to anything else until we can figure this out because we don't want more of this. Because if you think about it, 9/11 happened, everything was focused on airplanes, everything, airports, everything. You did nothing near an airport at any point. If your tire got flat and you were within a mile of an airport, don't pull over because you're going to have SWAT team around you just in case. Nothing could be done. But no checks on the seaports, no checks on the bus stations, no checks on the train stations. Not until much, much later. After they locked down and secured and got airports taken care of, then they started looking at everything else. That's the time that anyone could have done anything to the highways, to the train systems, you name it. They talk about the infrastructure, and they always bring it up whenever there's a power outage. When Texas lost power, 3/4 of the state lost power. Still not remedied to the situation where that won't happen again, and the rest of the infrastructure, same situation. So all it's going to take is someone to hit those key vital areas, those transformers across the country in a simple attack, and then boom, boom, boom. And I feel it's not going to take a rocket scientist. It's literally going to be, dime store hardware guys that can go to the hardware store, buy some basic components, put things together with some basic chemicals, get a rental truck, a U-Haul truck, homemade mortars, and start launching mortars off of these transformers and drive off, whatever the situation may be. Garbage bags full of effectively napalm with a sealed timer inside thrown off onto the highway looks like any other bags of trash on the highway when you're driving down until it's 8:03 in the morning during rush hour, and suddenly you've got 500 pounds worth of napalm blowing up on several sections of the highway. Stuff like that. That's where I feel that if there's going to be something to start the catalyst, it's going to be actions and activities like that. Yeah, Laura. Yeah, they do. They always mention the grid and do absolutely nothing. But the only thing they do with the grid is make it more expensive to be on the grid. That's the only thing right now is going on. Is just, the grid needs this, the grid needs that, and we're going to charge you 3 times more than what we did last year. We're still not going to fix the problems that make it so expensive in the first place. See, me, I look at it in my smooth brain thinking, I feel solar could work, and it could work more efficiently. If my logic is this, federal and state and municipal agencies take the first step. All your buildings, run it by solar, battery backups on the system, take a load off the grid. Counties and municipalities that can have your own generation station. It might be one windmill. It might be, if you've got a body of water, a small hydro system where you're not stopping the water, you're just diverting a flow of the stream to run, 10,000 watts worth of power that goes into a series of battery banks. It literally could be those modular power bank systems that are about the size of a semi-trailer, but you have that on standby, and your grid is wired so this way, at the minimum, all the municipal functions, the actual water and sewer treatment plants, your traffic signals, communications for your police and fire, all those things stay up and running. Then individual homes, apartment buildings, get them set up where they can now power themselves, and you have, instead of lines running everywhere, you'll have the community block transformers, which then balance the power out, make sure it's nice and even and clean. But it's not a case of now, my credits that I get for harvesting energy are going out to the entire network, and then the utility company is deciding what they're going to pay me back. Now it's a simple case of I'm using the power I generate, and if I happen to generate more, it goes into that local system and it offsets the area around it. I feel that there's a way to do it better, but it involves two things. It involves either one, the energy companies putting their own money into it, and then two, not getting as much out from it, because effectively speaking, everyone is going to be off the grid or on small localized grids. But again, that comes down to they're not going to do it. It's the same reason why oil companies aren't putting up charging stations for EVs, which would make more sense for them, because one, it still keeps people coming to their gas stations. Even if they're not getting gas, they're charging their vehicles there. So you make a high power charging setup where they can pull up, and 10 minutes on the charger, they're back and up and ready to go. Keeps people going there. You'd think they'd want to do that, but I don't do the numbers. I'm not part of the finance and the marketing, so I have no idea why they won't. Yeah, definitely PRO. Solar definitely can work if you're in the right area and you've got the right amount. I mean, there are houses all around me that have solar, but the position and the facings of their houses and their actual roof setup lets them have it. I've got one, two, three. I've got 6 gables on my roof. So there's very little square footage where you can put panels up that don't get shadowed out by another part of the roof going in any which direction. So I can cover my entire roof with panels, but literally as the sun comes up and goes over, there's only going to be about 4 hours in the day where all the panels are getting light. The rest of the time, it'll be a set of panels on one side, a set of panels on the other side. If it's winter time, it's going to be one on this end of the house and not on the other end of the house. So it just didn't work out for me in that aspect. But definitely, solar, I feel, could work as long as you have battery as a backup that is substantial enough to hold you over for several hours. That's the key thing. Because you can get a battery backup that's good for, I think the Tesla power bank, the Powerwall system is good for about 13 hours, which I was actually surprised. I was like, it's only 13 hours. I thought definitely that power bank, that should be good. It's a whole wall unit. It's the size of a refrigerator. That should be good for 72 hours. The guy's like, nope, it's about 13 hours. 13 hours. That's it. Not even one whole day. So even if you had solar and it was just full solar and you had 2 cloudy days, you wouldn't have power. That battery would be dead. So even improving upon that, there's got to be a better way to do it. And so it's one of those things where I feel more people need more options, but with all the regulations of everything, and it's one of those frustrating things. In my state, the 2 utility companies for electricity, they don't produce the electricity, they buy it from an electric producer, and then they pass on the cost to us, the user. They also control the natural gas in the state, but they've got to deal with the state legislator, and they worked into their system where you can get solar. It has to meet certain safety regulations, but what you can't have is solar and be completely off the grid, because that would cut them out of, making money. They cite it where it's a safety issue for linemen should the power go down. And I understand that if you're just backfeeding, which you should never do if you're just backfeeding. But you have people that have the standby generators, Generac generators, where they're connected to natural gas, conveniently enough, owned by the utility company, that when the power on the grid stops, the sensor on the generator, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, automatic shunt disconnects from the grid, clunk, opens up, generator starts running, powers up your entire house and runs on the natural gas with it. My backup generator has a manual disconnect on the circuit breaker. So if the power goes out, I come down to the circuit breaker, literally flip the switch, the main breaker shuts off. It allows me to then click, turn on the switch for the generator. I start it up, plug it in, run the whole house. If that's allowable, why not for solar? Because if you have solar and you've got enough panels, you won't ever have to come back onto the grid, ever. And that's what they don't want. And that's the main issue. My generator is by Furman. It's a dual fuel, so it runs on gasoline and propane. They make a tri-fuel that runs on natural gas as well, but we don't have natural gas, so I didn't have a need for it. But I wanted that use because my basic plan, my overall plan is this. If the power goes out and it's local, it's our street, our neighborhood, or section of the city, and our utility company sends out their little app notifications that says, okay, your area is going to be without power for 4 hours. If it's just going to be for 4 hours, start the generator up. I'll run it on gas, because if I need more, I can drive to another part of town or the next town over and get gas because they'll still have power. If it's a larger scale blackout or a longer time period, then I'd rather use propane, because if there are multiple towns without power, means multiple gas stations without pumps working without gas. But you can find a lot of convenience stores and other places that sell propane, and you hand them a 50, you take the tank, and you're good to go. So I can go out if I need to and buy more propane with cash in hand than trying to wait in line at the one gas station behind 50 other cars to get 1 gallon of gas, because that's all that they're allowing people to have, because they're running their pumps off of a backup generator and they only have enough gas in the generator to keep it going for the next 4 hours, whatever that situation may be. So that was my balance plan in using my generator: is less, 8 hours or less, I'd use gasoline. Longer than 8 hours, I'd switch to the propane, because then I would have more time to get more propane or find a place to get more gasoline. But because the propane does not last as long, that would be the key thing: is it's going to be using more propane in that time period. But it's easier for me to grab. I can literally just carry four canisters of propane and bring those back. I've got a hand truck. It's easier to stack those up, strap them down, and wheel that back if I need to, if I have to go on foot even and do that, than it is trying to get to a gas station, wait in line, pay whatever it is you're paying at the pump that meager amount of gas. I mean, I've gone to get gas at the BJ's Wholesale Club on a Wednesday, and some days, I don't know why, there'll be 30 cars there, and I'm waiting just 10 minutes to pull in and get gas. I can only imagine if you had a blackout situation where that happened to be a place that still had power, the line would be out the parking lot and out onto the street, and you'd use more gas idling, waiting to get in there just to get more gas. So again, it comes down to, for my purposes, it's easier to acquire propane quicker from multiple locations with no wait than it is trying to get gasoline and get that back. But again, you plan it out depending upon what you have. Yeah, that's the other thing too. It also depends upon where you're at and what your supplies are. And we had one winter storm where the four gas stations around, they're all within 1 mile of each other, and not more than three-quarters of a mile from where I live. All of them lost power. Every single one of them was scrambling to get backup generators to just get their pumps up and running. So they were in a situation where there was no gas. And then when you go further down the road and you go into the next town, you had one gas station was open. They had, on-site generator. They had no gas because they literally 500 cars had come up within the first 2 hours, everyone bringing in their gas canisters. And for me at that time period, I was part of that group of, okay, let me think of the gas station that's small, out of the way, 3 towns over. Find one. Oh, look, there it is. Yep, they're up, they're running, and they've got 60 people waiting. So it's always that case of, oh, that one place that you think no one else knows about, someone else always knows about it. And it's not necessarily the people that live there, it's all the other people that come in from around. It's that street that you pass on your way to work or whatever. You go, oh, I wonder what's down there. And then one day you drive down that street just for the hell of it, and you say, oh, I never knew this was down here. I'll keep that in mind. It's one of those situations. Rufus, hey, how you doing? Yeah, hey, thanks for sticking around. Yeah, gas stations. Gas stations need power. The pumps, most gas stations, I'm guessing it's safety regulations, they're connected to the grid. They usually have two breaker boxes, one set up specifically for the pumps, and then one set up for pretty much everything else, for the coolers, the registers, all that kind of stuff, because safety reason, primarily fire. If it's an electrical thing, you want to be able to kill the power that goes to the pumps, because you don't want the pumps, any of the pressure, nothing to have any power at all. So when they lose power, they lose power. And in many cases, some places, the company, for insurance purposes, and I found this out during that storm, won't allow a gas station of a certain size, volume wise, for like in ground gas tanks within a certain radius of other structures to have an external basically an external power source that's not integrated into the system, like a plug-in generator. In the event that that generator generates a spark that then boom causes a problem, or there's a problem with the electricity that it causes a surge and fries something, causing a fire. Because although they have fire suppression systems, those fire suppression systems work on a slow burn, and if the attendant clerk hits that button, if something blows up on an open pump in a gas station, you're pretty much done. There's not going to be. It's sort of like when you're pumping your gas, and then you got that one guy pulls up, leaves the engine running, gets out, might as well light a cigarette. Might as well light a cigarette. Engine running on his 82 Camaro. Yeah, it looks nice, except for, your interior's so a little ragged. And he's just hot filling. That's like, dude, you are not in NASCAR. Shut that shit off. But that's the way it goes. And it's like, I worked at a company that had a fueling, not a fueling station, but a fuel transfer for some chemicals. And they had a whole integrated fire suppression system on the loading dock that was designed that should there be a fire, one push of the button and 100,000 gallons are immediately come out and, douse the whole thing out, which, yes, that would work. But when the train car and the other cars that all blow up around it go off, before the water gets to suppress anything, it's going to blow those pipes and the wall that they're attached to halfway through the warehouse. So you're going to have 100,000 gallons going out, spraying in the air like a lawn sprinkler, not actually putting the fire out. Not to mention that anyone probably within 500 feet is going to be dead, and that just wasn't my thing. So it was one of those cases where when I got a different job, I was like, yeah, see you guys later. I'm out of here. But again, it's like gas stations, they need pumps, they need power, and that's how a lot of them end up doing it. And side note, which I didn't know about, and I just happened to ask a guy doing it once. He was filling a tank up, and they had just remodeled the gas station that he was at. And so I was asking him some questions about, hypothetically, if there was, let's say, a power outage and it's out for a while and you needed gasoline, because I see you opening up the inspection cap and you're just using a wrench and a socket here. It's like, would someone be able to get gas, garden hose? And he said, yeah, you could, but you need about 15 to 25 feet of garden hose and some strong lungs, because that's effectively the distance. When they bury those tanks, a lot of them, it doesn't seem like they're that deep because they're so large. But a lot of those tanks, when they're 5,000, 8,000, 10,000 gallons, they're down 10 to 15 feet below the ground of what you're sitting on with your vehicle. So when you see those fill caps and inspection caps, the tanks are, yes, underneath it, but they're 15 feet below you underground. So it's like you could siphon gasoline out, but you would need about 25 feet worth of hose to get it down into the tank. And then if you got a hand crank or something, then you go ahead and you can draw it up that way. But again, that's for academic purposes only. Anybody gets arrested, keep my name out your mouth. I had nothing to do with that. But in a grid down situation, that is still an option, a possibility that you can look at. And again, it's useless, trivial knowledge now, then it becomes high price valued item later on. I ask questions, Lisa Mendez, because that's the way I was brought up. Mostly from one of my grandfathers, always ask a question. If you don't know it, ask somebody. If you don't think they know it, ask somebody else just to see. But always find out. And a lot of it is just pure curiosity. I discover more things by accident because literally driving down a road day in, day out, commuting back and forth to work, I was thinking to myself, what's down that road? And I've gone down that road. Sometimes it's a dead end, literally. Other times I find that, oh, this is a shorter route to get where I need to go, or oh, this can be an alternative way to get to someplace else. Same thing with everything else. I have a curiosity about certain things. I'll watch somebody do something, doing a job, doing a task that I've never done before, and think, What's the process with that? If I can't figure it out by observing it, then I'll usually ask, and then I know. Sometimes I never have to use the information. Sometimes it's just up there. It's like trivia night is one of those things where, people say, hey, where do you learn these things? I don't necessarily learn them. I just ask, someone answers, because a lot of times too, you'd be surprised. People are willing to communicate and give you information if you're not being confrontational, if you're not blaming them for something, if you're showing a genuine curiosity in what they do, even if they think it's weird that you're interested in knowing about it, they'll be glad to tell you. And it's just one of those things where, you know, I grew up the quiet, shy kid, surprisingly, and I learned and observed by watching, never talking, never interacting, always watching, just seeing what people are doing, understanding, trying to figure things out, and then working it out on my own. As I got older, I started to develop more sociable skills and that sort of thing. But it still came down to observe and then try to replicate the actions or whatever it was, try to figure it out. And then if I couldn't, try to ask someone, say, hey, how do you do this? Or what's the purpose of that? And now it's just a matter of if I need to develop some type of baseline for a skill. And I'll go to someone who I know, oh, you know how to do this. Tell me, what is the purpose of this? Or explain to me how this works. Yeah, so it's like, I don't know. It all comes down to, for me, prepping, emergency preparedness is more of a habit. It's just sort of things that I do. Everything kind of is a hobby of general interest. So it's like I'm always willing to try to learn or understand something, bring it all in. I watch the news, and yeah, I'm a person that will tell you, yeah, a lot of the stuff that is being presented on the news is either misrepresented or it's not given entirely truthfully, no matter what. I'd rather have bad news that's bad news than good news that I find out later on wasn't as good as I thought it was and ends up being kind of bad. Just lay the shit out there. Let me decide on my own what I want to do with it. Just give me the information and I'll be on my way. So I still watch the news and I still watch to see what everyone is saying, what people are thinking, and where the trends are. I watch the different shows, all those nature shows and everything else. And I love YouTube because YouTube, I can get an idea in my head, type it in the search bar, and boom, 3 to 15 different videos show up, and I can start watching and learning things. Even when I'm out and about during the day, I'll see somebody doing something, find out about it. Sometimes it's a casual question. Sometimes it's just, let me see how this goes. And, I want to see what they do and then figure out, can I do exactly that? Yeah, yeah. I feel young people are definitely more distracted because there's a lot going on, and to a certain extent I almost feel like they have a greater advantage, but they don't see how to utilize it. I would have killed back in the 70s and the 80s to be able to have instant access to all kinds of information, to be able to literally know just about anything you wanted to know while you're having a conversation with someone. So when you're talking to someone and they're saying something, you can just like, yep, yep, keep talking, pull out your phone and go, and actually it says right here. I would have loved that. That would have been so fantastic to have that. But the ability to have access to everything all the time, anytime, can be overwhelming. And I say from my point of view, I just shut the shit off. There's been plenty of times where I'll be on YouTube or I'll be just scrolling through, looking at what pops up in my Google feed. Sometimes I'll click on an article and I'll start reading it like, yeah, no, that's stupid. Done. That's it. So I feel that it's the younger generation's inability to disconnect from those distractions to say, yeah, we're done for tonight. That's it. No more. I don't have a problem with walking away from it. I think that's the key thing is the information is still going to be there. Whatever it is, good, bad, and ugly, is still going to be there, but you don't have to engage in it. And I feel that that's where the younger generation, they don't know that because it hadn't been taught to them. Because to one extent, and I look at Gen Z as an example, more Gen Z are the children of Gen X. But because Gen X, we were around before all of this new technology, we were part of building and bringing the technology out, but it was at a different stage in its creation. And we were also in a different mindset. It's just sort of like, if you're in school and people are picking on you, they're picking on you right there in school. You get on one bus, they get on another bus. They can talk shit about you all they want, but guess what? You're not going to hear about it till the next day. You go home, you live your life. And then when you get in the next day, yeah, they said this about you and this about you. It's like, oh well, maybe you had some witty comebacks that you can go after them. That's the way it was. Now it sort of follows you all around, but no one turns it off. No one just says, yeah, okay, we're done, click, bye. Everyone's got to still stay connected. They still got to read it. Even if they're not responding, they still have to read what someone's saying about someone else who said something. I just don't see a need for that. There's a certain level where my tolerance caps off for certain things. And that's one of those cases where I do feel bad for them because there's really no way to, you can tell them, hey, just turn it off, but they're built different. They're wired into it. It's part of their lifeblood to keep them going. Yeah, home library. I've got them all over the place. I've got books that are prepper books, the how tos of this, that, and the other. And I've got books that are just pure pleasure, entertainment, and reading. And I've got books that are, some, biographical, autobiographical type of things, historical stuff, just things to, entertain the brain and keep it going. But yeah, if the power went out, that won't bother me. I've got plenty of books to read and reread without a problem. And I think that's one of the other reasons why, still in my mindset, if everything goes down and shuts off, as long as my family is safe and I don't have to tell people to get off my damn lawn, I'll be fine. I'll have a book a day to thumb through, go out, do some chores, check on the garden, take the dogs for a little walk. I'll be happy as I can possibly be. It won't bother me at all. Yeah, the books I will definitely say and I'll say it's always good to have a mix. I've got plenty of actual home repair books from always trying to figure out how to. This house was built in 1915, so needless to say, there are things that are it's built different compared to newer houses, and it also means that it breaks differently than newer houses. So I've got books on plumbing, electrical, and a lot of the stuff I learned as I went. Some of the stuff I knew when I was younger and watching other people and got more experience with this house. But I have all the repair books. I've got a Chilton repair book for every vehicle that I've had. Even if I don't have the vehicle, I still have the book because the knowledge is still the knowledge. And who knows? I may come across and get that make and model again, or someone else may need it. But I keep a lot of that stuff around. I have I have periodicals, old magazines of different articles. I don't cut out the articles. It's a thing of mine. I hate cutting out the article because there's always going to be something else on the other side that now I can't read that because it's been cut out. So I leave the whole magazine together. I'd rather have an entire magazine that only has 3 pages I actually want to read. But because they make the magazines the way they do, you can't just pull those 3 pages out because they're not in, the order that you need it. You got to cut it. So I just leave it. It's one of those things. So I've got stacks of different magazines from popular mechanics, popular science, guns and ammo, you name it. All those type of things. I've got them stacked up in different places. So I've got a wealth of knowledge that I feel that I'm definitely good. And then if we're in that type of situation, I'm also highly confident that with, nothing but board games and us to stare at each other, my family, eventually they're going to start reading some of these things because they're not going to have anything else to do. If there's no internet, there's no TV shows, no Netflix, no nothing like that. It's just us living like we're freaking, what do you call it, Little House on the Prairie. Everyone's going to sit down and read. You can read for fun and entertainment, and you can read something to learn. Yeah. I do have a portable hard drive, but I just have not organized everything that I want. I have a mental picture of having one, downloaded maps, local, county, state, regional, all that stuff. I'd say tables of different things, distance, weather, things like that. The natural National Geographic or the national the NOAA maps for the normal jet stream cycles, the winter and the summer type of things. This way you have an idea of the normal course and path of the wind and the temperature gauges and how things go. All that stuff. I want to be able to put those all into files, keep it onto the one hard drive. And then I've got an older laptop, which if I get it done correctly, I'll have that set up, and that will be my backup laptop with just that information, and then the portable hard drive. If I can't use that, I can plug it into something else. But yeah, I still have paper maps. All I still got tons of paper maps. Rand McNally, I still got those books from way back in the days when I used to have to literally find my way from one location job to another job, pull out the map and start plotting it out. But to move it into 21st century, keeping it all on a hard drive, definitely a lot easier. Came across today when I was getting all this equipment, I found a small memory card. I have no idea what's on it. I have no idea what's on it. I just literally I was moving some stuff, and it was a small micro SD card. So now I got to take time to plug that in to see what's on it. Might be something good. Who knows? Yeah, definitely, and definitely compass too. And I mean, we go old school. I've got uh, one, two, three. I got three compasses and several maps. And yeah, I was in the Boy Scouts. Never made Eagle Scout because I am not ambitious in that aspect. I like to show up, do my thing, and then go home. So I never strove to become an Eagle Scout, never made any big moves to that, but I learned all the basic skills. I will say this, my knot tying is gone. It's gone away. I can make the knots, cannot remember what they're called half the time. So it's just like, oh yeah, you do this, you do this. That's a shem shem shack knot. That's a flip flap knot. I have no idea anymore. I just know that I'll make a knot and use it for what I need to use it, and it gets the job done. But that's stuff that I can brush up on. But yeah, a lot of the stuff that I do is some of it is just to skill refresh, just to keep it up, to see if I can still do it, if I still remember it. Other times it's to kind of make it a little bit better, thinking that okay, I need to be able to do this faster, cleaner, more efficient, so I have fewer problems. Ben and breakfast, good to see you too. So it's a lot of stuff that goes on. I put everything in my daily activities, and there's plenty of days. Believe me, there are more than just a few days where there is nothing going on in my head for ideas of anything whatsoever. I am just literally just cup of coffee in my hand and just making my way through life. But then there are those times where whether it's an outside event locally, something related to me, or it's something in my area, or some national thing where boom, an idea goes off. Sometimes it's just coming down here and literally going through some of these containers, double checking expiration dates, going, oh, that's gone bad. Oh, got to move this up soon. Oh, we need to get more of these. Sometimes it's me standing staring at a blank, literally staring at a blank wall, going, I can move the bookcase over here, and then I can put these things on this case, and that would free up the space over there. And oh, I've got that other thing, and that's what I end up doing for the next week or so. Rummaging through the attic, rummaging through the garage, finding different things that I know I have, and then pulling them out, verifying, yep, this is it. This is what I need this for, and getting things done. I come across my place is a cluster of treasure troves of incidents. There's lots of stuff. I'm not a pack rat because I do end up doing either the project that I had intended to do, it might be weeks to months later, but I end up doing it, or something else is done with whatever I find. But there are plenty of cases where I'll find something or I'll have something and I'll go, I don't remember what I was going to use this for, but I know that it was supposed to go with, and then I'll go, oh, that's right. And then, I didn't do it because we sold the car. So I'll have items and things I was going to use on a vehicle and sold the vehicle, didn't use it, still had the item. Or we're going to do something with, this in the house, and then we did something else, so didn't need to use this. So a lot of my mental preparations and my plans and my projects come from just different ideas rolling around in my head, and it's just spinning around in there, and then every now and then something triggers it and goes boom, bingo, that's what we can do. Or it's, hey, you've got this in mind, why don't you try this? So it's like that's how I keep things moving. But there are plenty of times where I'm just brain dead, nothing going on at all. I get up, I go to work, I make it through the week, and weekend comes by, and sometimes I'm like, I should go and clean this up, or I should organize this. Like right now I have in my head a visual on how I'm supposed to rearrange the garage with our bicycles and the kayaks that we have, so I have more workspace again because I kind of boxed myself in. Have it in my head, have a good idea of what I'm supposed to be doing. Just have not gotten around to doing it. And right now, I'd say it's probably a better time to do it because it's not too hot out inside the workshop to do the work, but it's just a matter of me getting off my butt and doing it. Procrastination is something that I excel at a lot of times with very little effort. Glad you could make it, no problem. And actually, we are coming up on, wow, we are coming up on 2 hours and 24 minutes. See, this is what I tell you. This is what happens. I get talking, I just keep on going. And I did have some topics in general that I was going to touch on, but it was a lot easier looking at some of your questions that were popping up and things like that to work off of it. And I'm also glad a lot of you just decided to hang around and listen to me babble because that was really nice. And I'll say this: this was easier than when I do my videos because when I do my videos, and a lot of you have noticed it. Number one, I'm used to getting interaction. I'm looking at myself right now on here. I can see me, but I can also see your text coming up, so I know that there's feedback there. When I'm shooting a video, it's just me staring at my damn face. And also, when I'm talking, I visualize everything that I say, even if it's something that I've done. I visualize it. It's like inside my head, everything is moving around. So if I'm talking about planting in the garden, behind me, a memory of my garden last year comes up to the front, and I'll start talking about what I did last year. While I'm talking about that, then I'm looking at, oh, this is what I saw on the show. Literally, you'll see my eyes go up into a corner. I'm seeing something that I watched on a TV show for gardening up here in the corner. So now I'm internally looking at that. Then I think to myself, oh, what I'll need to do, and now I'm talking to you looking at the camera, is do this, this, and this. And then from behind me on this side, the possibility of that successful outcome comes from my imagination of I believe it'll happen, so it will, and it presents itself here. So now I'm looking at the successful idea I have with my garden. So when you see me kind of like looking at the camera and then looking away and looking around, I'm literally visually seeing all the things that I'm saying. That's the way it is. And the other part is, as you've noticed, these things are not used to staying still. So when I'm doing a recording, a lot of times I have to stand still so I stay in focus, stay in the camera, stay in the range. So a lot of times my hands don't move or I have something in them. But a normal conversation, if you're having a conversation with me, these hands are moving left and right because this helps me show you the whole picture. Literally, my hands are painting the picture of what I'm saying because I'm seeing everything coming in back and forth. So I'm memories from the past, boom, come around here. Something that I saw presently, shoom, that comes in here. An idea of what could happen in the future, shoom, that comes from up here. It's an all full 3D type of image in my head going all around. So I'm looking and seeing everything going on, hearing everything going on while I'm talking to you at the same time. And trying to do the videos, there's no feedback at all. So it's like I see nothing. So here, having this chance, it's a lot easier. Oh, thank you, Lisa. Yeah, there'll be more of them. There's plenty of them. And actually, you know what? I'm gonna wrap it up, guys, because at this point, oh, yeah, I'm an old person, and it is past my bedtime. It is almost 10 o'clock. So we're going to wrap it up, and I want to thank all of you on here. 100% grateful that you all came out, and I enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I won't say when the next one will be because I don't know, because this took a little working that it just happened to be the Memorial Day weekend, so I don't have to work tomorrow, but I'm still tired, as it is. So I'm hoping that if I plan another live stream, it'll be when I have some more time to do it. And same thing again, we'll try set it up and get it going. And maybe I'll have some like definitive topics to go on. I don't know. Or just be, we wing it, whatever it is. But, everybody that was on here, I want to thank you again. Say goodnight to all of you. And this ends this live stream. So have a good night, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. And, ooh, I don't know how to do that.